and engaging experience. Joining a translation session is fast and easy. Scan the Wordly QR code with your phone, select from over 25 languages, click Attend, and start reading the translated captions. You can also unmute your phone to listen to audio translations. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy a more inclusive and engaging experience. Joining a translation session is fast and easy. Scan the Wordly QR code with your phone, select from over 25 languages, click Attend, and start reading the translated captions. You can also unmute your phone to listen to audio translations. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy a more inclusive and engaging experience.
Good evening.
Recording in progress.
Good evening, and welcome to MILLBRAE City Council meeting for April 25th, 2023. Just a couple of instructions right now. This is our live experiment with the new software Wordly, which can translate into 25 different languages. To access this tool or this translation tool during the meeting, please scan the QR code. If you're on the city website, I think you can scan it from there, or click on https://attend, attend.worldly, worldly.ai/join/ and this is in caps, N, Z as in zebra, B as in Baker, M as in Mary, -4165. Any of the attendees who need special assistance, a disability-related notification or modification, or language assistance in order to participate in the meeting should contact Elaine Tran, our city clerk, at 650-259-2414. Notification prior to the meeting will enable the city to make reasonable accommodations to ensure accessibility to the meeting. And if you've pulled up the agenda, you can see the QR code that you can scan. and then click on the worldly device and put in your language. And then you can use your headset on your phone if you're here in City Hall to hear that live translation. The one thing that would really help us as we try to translate agenda items, if you know that you want to speak on an agenda item later on the meeting or under public comments items not on the agenda, please let the city clerk know so that they can make sure that that particular language is scrolled up and ready to go. With that, City Clerk, could you please call roll?
Certainly, Mayor. Councilmember Pappen will be joining us in a moment, and Councilmember Cahalan.
Present.
Councilmember Fung.
Here.
Vice Mayor Goodman is excused. Mayor Snyder.
Here.
3 members of City Council are present.
Thank you. And if you could all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. To the flag of the United States of America, stands God, liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have a set of ceremonial presentations tonight. And tonight, it is both a very sad day, but also a joyous day as we recognize a new anniversary date here in MILLBRAE. And we have the family of Officer Chakouti with us tonight to accept this. Whereas on this 25th day of April 2023, members of the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office, MILLBRAE Police Bureau, in association with the City of MILLBRAE, recognized the 25th anniversary of Officer David J. Chakouti's being killed in the line of duty. Whereas Officer Chakouti served the residents of MILLBRAE by safeguarding life and property, shielding them from violence and disorder, and protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression or intimidation. And whereas 25 years ago, on April 25th, 1998, Officer David J. Chakouti made the ultimate sacrifice as he was killed in the line of duty while serving and protecting the city of MILLBRAE. And whereas in sacrificing his life, Officer Chakouti protected and saved the life of his fellow officer, truly laying down his life so that others may live. And whereas Officer David J. Chakouti left behind 3 sons who carry on his legacy of honor, dedication, hard work, loyalty, leadership, devotion, sense of humor. And whereas the city of MILLBRAE, including this council, residents, and the MILLBRAE Police Bureau would like to honor Officer David J. Chakouti for his unceasing and unwavering commitment to the protection of the people of MILLBRAE. And whereas, as the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Washington, D.C., there are statues of lions that watch over the memorial. Inscribed below is the phrase, "It is not how these officers died that make them heroes, it is how they lived." Officer Chakouti was a model officer and lived a life of service to his community. He died in doing what he loved and sacrificed himself so that others may live. And whereas, in honor of his dedication and service to the citizens of MILLBRAE and the people of the state of California, now therefore, we, the members of the MILLBRAE City Council, do hereby proclaim April 25th, 2023 as Officer David J. Chakouti Day. And gentlemen, sons of Officer Chakouti, if you could please join me at the podium.
Great. I'd just like to thank the council, City of MILLBRAE, community, the Sheriff's Office. Today we had a lovely tribute to our father, bench dedication out front. And this proclamation is another overwhelming addition to today. We're very humble. And thank you very much again for doing this. We weren't expecting this today. And the turnout we had was amazing. And again, just want to thank the community for the support over the last 25 years and the Sheriff's Office for their continued support.
just to follow up what he said, thank you guys for everything, and it's meant the world to us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, sure.
This is your, oh, you know what? Signature. Two of you live here in,
Yes, we do.
so thank you for living here in
Thank
Millbrae.
you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you all.
Thank you. Our next proclamation is proclaiming April 28th, 2023 as Arbor Day. And Councilwoman Cahalan, did I give you Arbor Day? Oh, I'm sorry, Councilman Fung. And we have, to be accepted today, we have Boy Scout Troop 355, and I believe we've got Dave, Ricky, and John, oh, we have Ethan Young, Thomas Phelan, Alexander Pape, and Sebastian Pape. So we have Webelos, 2 patrol leaders, and Ethan, our senior patrol leader. So they'll be accepting.
For the City of Millbrae proclamation, whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting and preservation of trees. And whereas Arbor Day is now recognized throughout the nation and the world, reminding us that one person's intuitive can make a lasting and meaningful difference. And whereas the city has prioritized tree planting since 1994, helping to reduce the erosion of our topsoil, enhance our rural and urban landscapes, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource that must be managed and protected as they played a critical role in providing oxygen that is necessary for our survival. Trees also enhance the economic vitality of business areas and beautify our community. And whereas the city is committed to urban forestry and supporting programs for tree planting, such as the MILLBRAE Tree Dedication Program. And whereas MILLBRAE community members have supported the tree dedication program by purchasing 50 24-foot box coastal live oak trees to dedicate or honor their loved ones, the Park Division installed irrigation and has planted the trees and plaques along the spur trail for everyone to enjoy. And whereas on Saturday, April 29th at 10 a.m., the City of Millbrae will be planting trees on the spur trail at Taylor Boulevard in Minocqua Way to celebrate Arbor Day. So now, therefore, we, the Millbrae City Council, do hereby proclaim April 28th, 2023 as Arbor Day.
Thank you for this proclamation of Arbor Day. We're very excited to be accepting this.
While people are going back to their seats, I will tell you that the Boy Scouts and the Webelos are our best tree planters. And if anyone has time, go up to the community garden and see the 2 Satsuma plum trees that will be celebrating an Eagle Scout coming in July who planted some plum trees up at the community garden. So that'll be coming in July. Proclamation proclaiming the month of May as Asian Pacific American Heritage Month will be read by Councilman Fung and will be accepted by the Mills ASB Student President John Huang. And is that virtual now, City Clerk? I'm looking for him in the audience. So, Councilman Fung.
Whereas Asian Americans and Pacific Islander Heritage Month is observed in May to celebrate and pay respect to the contribution of Asian and Pacific American history, culture, and achievement. And whereas the theme for AAPI Heritage Month is advancing leaders through leadership. Whereas by recognizing the contributions and lived experience and life experiences of Asian American and Pacific Islander men and women, we celebrate the importance of inclusion in building a brighter, equitable, and just future. And whereas Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders enrich our history, society, and culture as leaders across many industries. And whereas we acknowledge the additional determination, hard work, and perseverance Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders must put forth to be heard and seen. These additional efforts are a result of inequitable institutional and systemic injustices. And whereas since the COVID-19 pandemic, many Asian Americans have faced heightened fears of increasing rates of anti-Asian harassment and sentiment. And whereas the City of MILLBRAE encourages all residents to learn more about Asian American and Pacific Islander heritage and work to combat racism and xenophobia through cultural events and education activities. And whereas the MILLBRAE community has benefited through the cultural richness, diversity, and generosity of its local Asian American and Pacific Islanders. Now, therefore, we, the members of the MILLBRAE City Council, do hereby proclaim May 2023 as Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month.
Thank you, Councilman. I don't see John Huang here. Oh, he's here virtually. Okay. And was Joy joining us virtually or not?
I'd like to say a few words.
Hello, my name is John Huang. Sorry I couldn't be there in person, but I want to thank the city for making this proclamation, and on behalf of all the students at Mills and all the students in MILLBRAE, we appreciate the highlighting of Asian and Pacific Islander histories. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And I learned in preparation of this that Mills High School has a Korean club, a Japanese club, a Chinese club, and a Filipino club. So if anyone's watching tonight and want their kids to get involved, Mills has got you set up for that. Thank you, Mr. Wang, and thank you, Councilman. Next up is proclamation proclaiming the month of May as Older Americans Month. It will be read by Councilwoman Pappen, and we have an almost full house of our senior commission. We have Chair Rochelle Mullen, Vice Chair Marlene McBride, Patrick Cheng, and Vinita Ghosh.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. City of MILLBRAE, California proclamation. Whereas each May, the United States Department of Health and Human Services Administration for Community Living leads our nation's observance for Older Americans Month. This year's theme for 2023 is Aging Unbound. An opportunity for all of us to explore the many ways older adults can remain in and be involved with their communities while combating age-related stereotypes. And whereas a growing number of the city's population are older Americans with great resource of skills, wisdom, and experience upon which our community has been built and continues to enrich our daily lives. Following along here, okay. And whereas all persons reaching their later years should have the opportunity to share fully in the benefits of our advances in economic wealth, science, technology, and culture. And whereas the City of MILLBRAE recognizes the need to create a community that provides services and support for older Americans in order for them to thrive and live independently. And the city of MILLBRAE can work to build an even better community for our older residents by planning programs that encourage independence and sharing their wealth of knowledge, and ensuring activities are responsive to individual needs and preferences, and increasing access to services that support aging in place. Now, therefore, we, the members of the MILLBRAE City Council, do hereby proclaim May 2023 as Older American Month, and we urge residents to recognize the contributions of our older citizens and help create an inclusive society. Our senior advisory group here, if you'd like to meet me up front.
Thank you very much. We appreciate everything that the City Council does to support our group, and we hope everybody enjoys having us around. So.
Thank you, Senior Commission and Councilman Pappen. Next is the proclamation proclaiming the month of May as National Historical Preservation Month. Whereas the National Trust for Historic Preservation established May as Historic Preservation Month in 1973 to promote historic places and demonstrate the social and economic benefits of historic preservation. And whereas Historic Preservation Month can instill awareness of the local, historically significant buildings and landmarks to the residents of MILLBRAE and surrounding communities. And whereas historic preservation is an effective tool for revitalizing neighborhoods, fostering local pride, and maintaining community character while enhancing livability. And whereas the city of MILLBRAE is proud of its historical buildings and dedicated residents, in 1985, the MILLBRAE Historical Society relocated the Spring Valley Water Company Manager's House to the MILLBRAE Civic Center, which is now known as the MILLBRAE Museum. And whereas it is important to celebrate the contributions made by dedicated individuals in helping to preserve the tangible aspects of the heritage that has shaped us, and whereas preserving our history, preserving our historic resources is vital to ensuring the success of our commercial and residential environment and maintaining the character and heritage of the city of MILLBRAE, now, therefore, we, the members of the MILLBRAE City Council, do hereby proclaim May 2023 as National Historical Preservation Month, and we encourage residents to visit the city's historical structures, learn the city's rich history, and celebrate who we are. And we have John Muniz, the president of the Historical Society, joining us. And while he's walking to the podium, I just want to also remind everyone we have a historical train station museum and many other historical places. And if any of you can help me find the neighborhood that Pan Am built in MILLBRAE, we are trying to find that neighborhood, whether it's Landing Lane or Marina Vista or MILLBRAE Manor. We are trying to find some of that, of our history. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. And as the mayor said, we're celebrating our 75th anniversary, MILLBRAE, this year, 1948. And I've got a great idea for the community of MILLBRAE. to help preserve History Day on a Saturday. Get your kids off the TikTok and the iPhone, get the family together and come down and visit our 3 beautiful museums. We have the MILLBRAE Historical Society Museum right across from the library, built in 1898, full of MILLBRAE history. You can learn a lot from just going to that museum. In the back of the museum, you have the MILLBRAE Carriage House, built in 2016. We've got a lot of beautiful pictures of MILLBRAE back in the day. We've got the only living color pictures of the Mills Estate in the Carriage House. Also, we've got MILLBRAE's second fire apparatus, the 1926 American LaFrance. Beautiful fire engine. Actually, it was really the first fire apparatus. The first fire apparatus was a converted Ford Chevy truck. So that really wasn't an apparatus. But we have the second fire apparatus. It's a beautiful museum. You can spend all day there. The kids will love it. Also, after you tour these 2 museums, you can go have lunch at one of MILLBRAE's beautiful luncheon places, and then go down to the MILLBRAE Railroad Museum. Built in 1907. It's the 3rd MILLBRAE Railroad station. The first one burnt down, the second one was destroyed in the earthquake, and this one is still standing. MILLBRAE, at the south of MILLBRAE Avenue on California Drive. You'll love it, especially if you have kids. Bring them on down there. We've got the 1941 City of San Francisco Pullman sleeping car. You can take a tour of that. It's really nice. It is fantastic. So, come on down. Let's celebrate MILLBRAE by touring these 3 museums one day. Thank you so much. Oh, here's this. Oh, we got a picture. Right here.
Next up is the proclamation proclaiming the month of May as Mental Health Month. And Councilman Cahalan will be reading the proclamation, and it will be accepted by I've missed my notes here, our San Mateo County Behavioral Health Commissioner Jean Perry and Caitlin Chang.
The City of MILLBRAE Proclamation. Whereas mental health is part of everyone's overall health and well-being, and mental illness is prevalent in the nation, with 1 in 5 adults experiencing a mental health issue every year. And whereas the COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated the number of people experiencing feelings of anxiety and depression, and whereas in previous years, the U.S. Surgeon General issued a health advisory on the youth mental health crisis that has been further exposed by the COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas 1 out of every 24 Californians with a serious mental health condition have difficulty functioning in everyday life, and if left untreated, have life expectancies 25 years shorter than the general population. And whereas every day, millions of people face stigma related to mental health and substance abuse conditions and may feel isolated and misunderstood. And whereas mental health and substance use conditions are treatable health conditions, and with a full recovery, individuals can experience full and meaningful lives. And whereas this year, May Mental Health Month, SMC Take Action for Mental Health is inviting everyone on Sunday, May 21st, 2023, to participate in a community wellness fair and 5K event from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Seal Point Park. Now therefore we, the members of the MILLBRAE City Council, do hereby proclaim May 2023 as Mental Health Month to enhance public awareness of mental health, to help end the stigma, and direct members of the community to resources and support for more mental health and substance use conditions.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council and staff. I am Jean Perry. I'm a resident of MILLBRAE, and I'm a family member serving on our Behavioral Health Commission. And I realize we have the oldest member of the commission and the youngest member of the commission here tonight. My pronouns are she, her, and as you probably know, the County Behavioral Health Commission is committed to the goals of promoting wellness and recovery, enhancing public awareness and knowledge of mental health and substance use conditions, and eliminating stigma. I'm going to turn the time over to Caitlin Chang, who is also on the Behavioral Health Commission as a youth member. And I'll wrap it up with a sentence after she talks to you.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Jean. My name is Caitlin Chang. I use she, her pronouns. Just like Jean said, I serve as a youth liaison on the Behavioral Health Commission, and I'm also a senior at MILLBRAE's very own Mills High School. So first, I'd like to thank the City of MILLBRAE for proclaiming 2023 as May Mental Health Month, and I'd like to introduce a little bit about what this month means. So May Mental Health Month is observed across San Mateo County, California, and the United States. Lime green, which is the color you see Jean and I representing, as well as some of the council members, is the national color for mental health and represents how we want to bring a bright light to an important issue that may be hidden or seen negatively. Mental Health Month is one of the best times of the year where we reduce stigma, connect people to services, and promote wellness for mental health and substance use conditions. This year's statewide theme is #ShareForMH. San Mateo County's Mental Health Month will feature a variety of virtual and in-person events, advocacy days, and communications campaigns. Our communication campaign will be in English and Spanish, and events will be in English, Spanish, and Cantonese. Interpretation for additional languages is also available upon request. Now, as for why Mental Health Month is important to me, as someone with lived experience and with family members of lived experience, I've come to realize how important Mental Health Month, or May Mental Health Month, is for lifting up others and also sharing our empathy for people who either have lived experience or don't. Really, and as a school advocate in my own community, I've realized that this is a time to host events and share in what makes us all human, and really how we connect with each other. And I think May Mental Health Month, specifically in San Mateo County, is a great time to join in on community events and learn more about May Mental Health Month, what it means, and how we can act as community members to better our community as a whole. Starting today, I invite you to take action on one or more options. The first one is to use the #ShareForMH to spread the word about Mental Health Month on social media. 2, attend a local Mental Health Month event. And 3, wear a lime green ribbon. You can wear one physically on your clothing or virtually on your social media profile. And this can spark a conversation and sharing more about mental health. More support for the above options and more details on free events and resources can be found at smchealth.org/MHM. Now I'd like to turn it over to Jean to close us off.
So I want to tell you that the City of MILLBRAE is also celebrating Mental Health Month by lighting up City Hall in lime green. And that will be starting probably May 1st or even tonight. I don't know. The awareness of wellness of ourselves and each other is an important part of our community. I understand that one of the departments in our city is actually going to take mental health first aid training together. And I welcome anyone that's interested in that training to look at the website, which you're seeing it portrayed here, and we'll be sure to get paper copies of this in the library and other locations, so you can scan the QR code and find out about the variety of events that are happening, some of which aren't as strenuous as a 5K. There's going to be a poetry jam for teens at Woodside High School this coming Saturday. There will be events for parents at the same event. There are paint and snack events. There's an event at Dolger Center in Daly City for older adults to learn how to avoid being scammed. There's just a variety of things, and we actually can't fit them on a piece of paper, which is why they're on a website. So I welcome you to consider your own wellness, consider the wellness of those around you this month, and enjoy Mental Health Month.
Ms. Chang, I'm so glad that you're on the committee. Thank you for representing Millbrae and young people. I feel very safe in your hands. Thank you. And I believe, City Manager, the lights are going on May 1st.
That is correct, Mayor.
Okay, and last is a proclamation proclaiming the month of May as Bike Month. And some of you might know I advise a youth group, and I was with them last week. There were about 35 of them, and I asked how many of them have a bike or ride a bike, and it was less than a seventh of these young people in here. So I'm very happy to celebrate this tonight, and we're going to have Park and Rec Commissioner John Kiefer, who is chair of our MILLBRAE Bike Pedestrian Advisory Committee, accept this tonight. But May is a big month for bikes on here. So, whereas in 1956, the League of American Bicyclists established Bike to Work Week, which would be known as National Bike Month today, whereas Bike Month encourages residents and people to try alternative methods of transportation to reduce air pollution and promote healthy living. And whereas this month also brings awareness to ensuring the safety and protection of bicyclists through safe infrastructure. And whereas it also brings attention to encourage stakeholders to emphasize the usage of bikes as it provides sustainable and educational development for young children and adults alike. And whereas more than 1 million Bay Area residents live within 5 miles of work, many residents can make the pledge to take control of their health and well-being. And whereas the City of Millbrae's environmental program is proud to announce Bike to Wherever Day, which is actually Bike to Wherever 3 days, May 18th to the 20th, starting on May 18th, where employees are encouraged to bike or use alternative means of transportation. And whereas Bike to Wherever Day is a reminder to take control of your well-being and our carbon footprint and our impact on the earth. Therefore, we, the members of MILLBRAE City Council, do hereby proclaim May 23rd as Bike to Wherever Month. There's also one other bike activity coming. I know we have many people in MILLBRAE that are housing proponents, and Silicon Valley Bike Coalition is organizing a community bike ride. It'll start in South San Francisco and I think ends in San Mateo, and it will drive around and look at all of the new affordable housing projects that are under construction. I will find out more information. If you'd like to join me, I'll be on that ride. Please reach out to me. You've got my city council email address. So with that, Commissioner Kiefer.
Thank you very much, Council, for recognizing Bike Month. Not only is this a Bike Month for MILLBRAE, this is also thank you very much. This is also a national event in a lot of communities across our country. And a couple of things I'd just like to call out that when you're bicycling, first of all, inflate your tires, get ready, it's spring. Probably haven't been out there much with all the rain. But we have a beautiful spur trail loop, and you can take advantage of that. We've tried to encourage having a safe way to get around the city, and it's very enjoyable with all the oak trees that we've planted out there, and it's wonderful. The maintenance out there has been fantastic. So get out there, take the family, take your friends, get on a bike. But if you're going to get on a bike, I also want you to be careful out there. So they have 5 tips that they recommend. Follow the law, number 1. Okay, ride with traffic, obey the traffic signs and lights, be predictable, don't swerve, don't go between parked cars. One of the number 1 ways to get hit is to do something like that. And ride in a straight line. Be predictable to the cars and the other people that are around you. Be conspicuous, wear bright clothing. Ride where people can see you. Think ahead, watch for car doors. Anticipate what drivers and pedestrians, this also applies to drivers in general. So it's just taking those rules, also applying it to bicyclists. Watch for what others on the road will do next. And certainly after that long spring and all that rain, watch for potholes out on our roads, and also road hazards in general. And ride ready. Now you're going to get a helmet, right? Get a helmet. Be ready. Get one of those. Make sure your bike is operating correctly. It's been sitting around the whole winter. Now you're going to get it out. And make sure the seat is at the right height so it's comfortable when you ride. So as Mayor said Bike to Wherever Day is 5/18 to 5/20. And you can go, I think, John, all those museums you mentioned, let's go bike to those museums. Let's go see them. This is John over there. And as you said, the affordable housing ride is also in May. One thing that I participated in this past week was that we're doing safe routes to school audits, which has been very beneficial, a little bit scary at the same time, where you get to see the drop-offs, how parents, our kids really can't bicycle safely if our parents aren't doing safe things in their cars. And we're dropping off kids at crosswalks so we don't do the loop through the school, which is a very organized way to do it. And we've examined that. This has been a whole collective of people. We have the city engineers out there. We had Andrea Papajohn, who came out representing the environmental team. Sheriff's office, it was very enlightening what they had to say about the things that can happen around our schools. But MILLBRAE was selected by the San Mateo County Office of Education, Safe Routes to School, Travel Fellowship, and they have a team that they've hired a consultant to go in and look at programs that we can make. It's called ELTA, planning to improve crossings, pick up and drop off, and number one, promote walking to school. It's amazing. I went out there and stood on a corner and was doing a traffic audit and, trying to see things that are good, bad, or ugly. And it's a little bit scary out there. I did not see enough kids. I saw one adult cyclist and a few kids were walking to school. The rest are coming up and rolling up in SUVs. So let's get our kids out there, really push. We've tried to we'll make things safer, we'll make things better, but it also is a culture, a bike culture that we really don't have in MILLBRAE. We have it. When there are kids on bikes going to school, people slow down, they pay attention. And we're trying to promote that, trying to get that going. And last but not least, in October, we have our multimodal rodeo, bike rodeo we call it, but it's not just a bike anymore. We have skates, we have blades, we have scooters, we have mono wheels. We're going to have that rodeo, and we're going to talk about safety, and we'll have our emergency personnel out there talking about safety too. And they give away helmets. And they give away free food. And on that, you can check the city website, but I'm sure it will be rolled out and announced through our resources that we have for communication. That was, Green Hills is on May 5th. That will be something that anybody can join into. You can be a member of a team and go, look at how people are operating around our schools and identifying some of the challenges that we're having at the schools. School principals are involved in this. And the crossing guards and the storage year. That's going to come up on May 5th. I think it starts at about 7:35 a.m. and runs to about 10 a.m. It's really great if you're interested in that kind of thing, or if you have kids, go in and attend that.
Excellent. Recreation Director Hannah Moran, I forgot to call you. Do you want to join us? Okay. Join us for the photo.
Hand up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And again, just to point that out, parents or people who live near Green Hill School, the second walk audit will be Friday, May 5th, 7:30. You should see a crowd down there, and they walk the area and just watch what people do, and they look out if there's a plant that's too big and blocks visibility to a driver. Some of the changes can be made right away. Some of them take the city engineering department a little bit more work with bulb outs and things like that to give pedestrians and cyclists a better chance of getting where they're going safely. Thank you. So I hope you join us. The weather is great. We finally are experiencing spring. Let's get out there on those bicycles, but please, even adults, wear a helmet. Thank you. City Manager, I believe next up is agenda overview and staff brief. And City Manager, if you could please take it away.
All right. Thank you very much, Mayor. Good evening to you. Good evening, members of the City Council. Tom Williams, City Manager. As we move forward with the agenda, item number 2 is we have our calendar of events and reports of bills and claims. Item number 3, approval of meeting minutes. We do not have any meeting minutes for approval this evening. Item number 4, we also do not have any reports from any committee or commission chairs. Then we move into public communication. This is the item on the agenda that any member of the public can address the City Council on any item not on the agenda. And the public is limited to 3 minutes for their comments. Then we move to the consent calendar. We have 6 items on consent this evening. The first is to receive and file the monthly general fund financial report for the period ending March 31st. Item number 6 is to waive the second reading and enact an ordinance amending section 8.20.830 and 8.820.890 and 8.20.900 of Title 8 of the MILLBRAE Municipal Code for the collection of sewer charges to the county tax roll. Item number 7 is an adoption of a resolution authorizing city manager or designee to execute a professional services agreement with ECS Imaging for community development scanning services of all of our community development and building permit records. Item number 8 is to consider by motion approval of a request from Fiddler's Green in partnership with Strides for Life Colon Cancer Foundation for a street closure and Molly's 90th birthday and fundraiser event on May 7th, 2023. Item number 9 is to consider adoption of a resolution approving the sale of the interim community center modular building and authorizing the city manager to execute related documents for that sale. This item number 9, has been requested to be pulled from the consent calendar for discussion. And then item number 10 is to consider adoption of a resolution awarding a construction contract to Asphalt Surfacing, Inc. for the Upper Hillcrest Subbasin 4 pavement repair project and authorizing task order number 1 for the construction management services under an on-call agreement with CSG Consulting. Then we move forward. We have one public hearing item this evening. That's item number 11. And this is a public hearing to review the 6th cycle housing element, update revisions in response to the comments received from California Department of Housing and Community Development, and to consider self-certification and adoption of the 6th cycle housing element update and authorize staff to submit the housing element update to Housing and Community Development. Then we move to existing business, item number 12. This is a quarterly report from Life Moves, our partner in the MILLBRAE Homelessness Engagement Local Program known as HELP. Then the last item on the agenda under new business, item 13, is preliminary general fund budget presentation for the fiscal year 23-24. This is an informational item. And then we move to council comments. And then, Mayor, we do have a closed session item after this council meeting this evening. And that is regarding a conference with legal counsel and anticipated litigation under a property transaction, a claim of Diane White. Okay, Mayor, a lot, we are getting busy here at the end of April and May, and a lot was said. As May is Bike Month, we will be kicking off our partnership with Spin and the City of Burlingame to launch our joint bike share program officially on Thursday, May 11th. Riders will be able to rent e-bikes from within the city at various locations in both MILLBRAE and Burlingame. And Spin will also be hosting a demonstration day at the MILLBRAE Farmers Market Saturday, May 13th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. for the bike sharing program. So again, MILLBRAE Farmers Market, Saturday, May 13th, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. for the e-bike sharing program demonstration. Then we have a community meeting coming up. This is a community meeting on the transition of the sewer service charges to the county tax roll. We are in the process, as I had mentioned, the item on the agenda this evening, the service charges for all parcels to the county property tax bills for fiscal year 23-24, which would start this July 1st, 2023. And so we are hosting 2 community meetings for residents to learn more. The first is scheduled for Thursday, April 27th at the MILLBRAE Recreation Center from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. And the second is scheduled for May 2nd, 2023 at MQ Healthy Foods, the old Burger King store, from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. So for information, you can visit our website, type in MILLBRAE utility billing, and this information will come up Also, if you have any questions, you can direct those to our Finance Director, Mr. Mike Sung, at 650-259-2433. Other events that we have this Saturday, April 29th, to celebrate Arbor Day. We'd like to invite all the community out for a tree planting and cleanup. It will start at 10 a.m. and go from 10 to noon. We will serve lunch to all of the volunteers, and we'll be planting trees along the spur trail just north of Taylor Boulevard, so between the spur trail and the Taylor Middle School parking lot. All materials will be provided for the tree planting and cleanup, and so we look forward to having a lot of our residents and community members out to plant some trees on Arbor Day. We also have a tree maintenance class this Thursday, May 4th. Our tree maintenance class will be from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. at the Recreation Center, so participants will learn how to maintain their trees all year long. This class will give you basic tools to learn how to prune your trees properly, sanitize your tools, and take care of your trees after drought conditions. So again, I think this is a great class that our Public Works Department is putting on. And then lastly, it was mentioned the Safe Routes to School walk audit. So the city of MILLBRAE was selected by the San Mateo County Office of Education Safe Routes to School Travel Fellowship Program. And this is to address issues related to student travel at both Green Hills Elementary and Meadows Elementary School. The team did conduct a Safe Routes to School walk audit this last Friday at Meadows Elementary School. And then this next walk audit, as mentioned, will be May 5th, starting at 7:35 a.m., so 7:35 to 10 a.m. at Green Hills Elementary School. So people can visit the website walkaudit-gh, so walkaudit-gh for Green Hills, for more information. And lastly, Friday, May 19th and Saturday, May 20th, the MILLBRAE Art Show. So the MILLBRAE Cultural Arts Advisory Committee invites everyone to submit their artwork and attend the MILLBRAE Art Show coming up on those dates in May. It will begin, like I said, on Friday, May 19th from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. that evening, and then conclude on Saturday, May 20th. The art show opens from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. So for more information, you can also visit our website at MCAA-CART-SHOW. So MCAA Cart Show, all one word. There, that concludes my update.
Thank you, City Manager. If I can add for the art show, we're bringing the art show back to the end of the school year in the hope that we get more student art submittals. We did get quite a few last October, but it's also available for all age groups, even older people, even seniors, and it is multimedia. It can be any form of artwork on that. So we had lovely quilts. We're hoping to get some sculptures on that. And artists, if you do want to sell your art, you are allowed to sell your art at this event. So please put that on your calendar. On the Friday, the 20th, we have a reception and a gathering. So hopefully people will come out and come see the art of the people of MILLBRAE. Thank you. And thank you, City Manager. Next up, approval of minutes. We have no minutes tonight. Agenda item number 4 is oral report from city committees and commission chairs, and we have no reports from city committee or commissioners tonight. Moving on to public comment. This is for the public to speak on items that are not on tonight's agenda, and I believe we have one. I have one slip. City Clerk, do we have anybody online? Traditionally or historically now, what we do is we take people who give us our white slips. We do people in person first. And then we call on people, gives people on Zoom time to find that raise your hand your function and let the city clerk know that you are there. So we have Karen Hardy from the Leadership Council of San Mateo County. Please join us.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Schneider, City Council members. It's nice to be here tonight, and I'm excited about the Affordable Housing Bike Tour, and the museums in MILLBRAE. So it's been a great meeting so far. I just wanted to come and tell you a little bit more about Leadership Council San Mateo County. I think I've shared some of the information with some of you on the City Council, and some of you have been involved in some way. We are an organization whose mission is to connect, inspire, and educate both senior and emerging leaders of the business sector, the nonprofit sector, and the government sector of San Mateo County, and bring them together to solve some of the biggest issues that are facing our communities. We are a new 501c3 nonprofit, which was formed in 2020 in the midst of the pandemic. And although the county of San Mateo has an amazing reputation for being a collaborative county and a county that gets things done and works incredibly effectively, it was also becoming clear that not all communities and voices were at the table when we were designing solutions in unprecedented times. So we, my co-founder and I, along with an incredible board of directors, came together to found Leadership Council San Mateo County to really build relationships across all three sectors, bringing in the business community to build deep relationships with our government and our nonprofits. We believe that we need to build these relationships before we need them, and really create an ecosystem in San Mateo County where we're all working together. We do this work mainly through 2 leadership immersion programs. So they're 10-month programs that run from September through May. One is the core program, CORPS, for senior leaders, which includes elected leaders, C-suite executives, business owners, and senior business executives, and then and nonprofit executive directors, as well as senior members of government. The Emerging Leaders is a program for rising leaders in San Mateo County. There's no age limit. It's really about where you are in your career, people who've demonstrated real leadership skills and are looking to take the next step in their career. It has a heavy skills component as well as doing project work for nonprofits in our county. We'd love to welcome the city of MILLBRAE to participate in our programming. We have 17 of the 20 cities represented in our classes and in our program, and we'd love to have the voice of MILLBRAE and the issues that matter to you represented both in our programming and in our classes. By bringing all 20 cities together in 26 unincorporated areas, we're having really rich discussions about both the history of the issues that we face and how to move forward. And we'd love to have MILLBRAE's voice in that room. So we welcome you to apply to our Senior Leaders Program, as well as it maybe having staff members who are showing real promise to become members of our Emerging Leaders Program. So I will leave. I've got some information. If I can leave that somewhere, I'll give that to you guys. Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much.
Please bring it to the city clerk.
Excellent.
Great.
Thank you
And
very much.
Thank you. And to members of the public, I'm a graduate of Leadership Mountain View. So I went through the 10-month program down there in 1996. I still have those contacts today. They're incredibly important in helping make things happen. So I hope people of MILLBRAE will consider this. Okay. Council, I didn't ask earlier. Oh, I'm sorry. There's one member on Zoom. Please go ahead.
Brad Silver, if you could go ahead and mute yourself. Brad Silver.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. My name is Brad Silver. I'm a member of the Citizens Committee for San Mateo County Gun Buyback. Al Camoli, who lives in MILLBRAE, was supposed to be here tonight, but he could not make it, so I'm filling in for him. Our next gun buyback will be in South City on the 6th of May. It will be from 10 o'clock in the morning to 2 o'clock in the afternoon at 1050 Mission Road in South City. And we've had 6 gun buybacks already, and we alternate now between a southern location, and then a more northern location in the county. So we've taken back, let me get the exact number here, 2,358 weapons in our 6 gun buybacks, which is a lot. These include assault weapons, ghost guns, all kinds of weapons. And we work very carefully, closely with the Sheriff's Department. So we're going to all the city council meetings to make sure people are aware that our next gun buyback is very soon on May 6th, and we expect another big turnout. Just want to make sure everybody across the county is aware.
Thank you. City Clerk, we don't have this organization in our Civic Coordinating Council. If they had a flyer for an event, could you give them an email address to send that flyer to?
Of course, Mayor. They could send all their information to pio@ci.millbrae.ca.us. Again, is pio@ci.millbrae.ca.us. Thank you.
Thank you, City Clerk. Do you have anyone else on Zoom? And we have no other slips. Closing public communication for items not on the agenda. Moving to consent calendar. Council, I know we're pulling item number 9 from consent calendar. Is there anything else?
Hey, Mayor, I hate to interrupt here. So we have an issue with Wordly. We found what the problem was. The QR code is the wrong QR code on the agenda, but there is a correct QR code that users can use.
Yes.
And where's that located?
I can share screen right now, and then also I can, and you could also use the link that's correct on the agenda, but not the QR code itself.
Were you going to do a screen share?
Yes.
I should have mentioned, this is our first, we demonstrated it last week. We're
This
going
is in the
beta
meeting.
live today.
Yes.
This is a beta test.
Yeah.
You always work out the bugs the first couple of times.
I do apologize, but this is from the media kit that was downloaded. Thank you.
No worries. This is brand new technology, nice article in the Daily Journal. So,
And Mayor, I think as Councilmember Cahalan had pointed out, there is a link on the agenda itself as well that people can use.
very good. So coming back to consent calendar, if there's no one else wanting to pull anything, there are no public slips. If there could be a motion to approve 5, 6, 7, 8, and 10. We can't hear you. Do you have a question on an item on consent calendar? Something? That would have been on public items. You're the family that reached out to me via email? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open up public comments for items not on the agenda. Please come on up, but if you could fill out a slip too for that.
When you're done.
Yeah, when you're done, just come on up. You're the family from San Bruno. Yes, please do.
Thank you so much. This
And
is
if
the
you could
first
just
time.
state your name just so that we have something for the record.
Yes. My name is Ling Wang. My family and I are victims of the recent car breaking which occurred in downtown MILLBRAE on Broadway on Wednesday, April 12, between 8 to 9:30. We have since gone back to that area, hoping to find any witnesses or any, might be, any surveillance videos. And one common thing that we found that, many retail owners seems very resigned and frightened to talk about it. Mentioning that the car breaking is, very common and it happens every day. And from them, this is kind of like a common phenomena around the area. To be honest, we are very shocked to hear that. Wonder if this is true. If so, then it's saddened that and frustrated us that how unsafe the downtown MILLBRAE has become this day. We also spoke to the sheriff's office. They also believe this is an organized crime, as the thieves seems able to successfully breaking over and over again without any without getting caught. We would like to hear from the city if this is really what's happening right nowadays in downtown MILLBRAE. If there are any actions, plans, to address this, and also there's anything we can do as a citizen, to make a downtown MILLBRAE safe again and to hang out. So yeah, this is the first time I actually attend a council meeting. I'm a little bit nervous, and then I also, we come to MILLBRAE all the time to enjoy, and it just so I don't know, what happened, but I just wanted to, be able to still come back to MILLBRAE downtown to enjoy without concern about, oh yeah, my car is gonna get breakdown or something like that. So yeah, just wanted to hear from the city what you guys, think.
Thank you. Due to public meeting acts, we can't comment. We can't specifically address your concerns tonight. But I appreciate that you sent me an email. I believe you also talked to our Assistant City Clerk, Eduardo, on that. and I've been out of town and just got back yesterday, so we just haven't had a chance. But City Manager, I believe we have a report, an annual report, or sometimes twice a year on, from our Chief of Police on that, and maybe it's time to bring an updated report of what's going on here in MILLBRAE. And I'm looking at Chief Amons in the back there, so he's our police chief. And if we can bring that to a future council meeting, and we can bring you back at that. We're just not allowed to comment specifically on your issue.
Oh, yeah, but what I'm saying is in general, for all the, business owners, because I had a chance to speak to all the owners on 200 blocks, and a lot of them are really, really frightened, and they don't want to talk about it. It's just kind of weird, because you would think, you wanted to help each other, also their customers as well, but for some reason, they were just like, so reluctant to do so.
Thank you. Okay, and to the city clerk, sorry, that'll make minutes a little bit more confusing, but thank you for that.
No,
And
Mayor,
thank you for the flexibility.
If I may, for clarification, since the resident said that this is her first time being here and maybe not familiar, so because it's not on the agenda and because of publicly noticing requirements, that's why the council cannot address the issue, but we'll be in touch, and then, as the mayor had requested, agendize this for a future discussion.
And we do have your contact information. I have your email. So thank you. Okay. Consent calendar. If there could be a motion to approve agenda item number 5, receive and file monthly general fund financial report for the period ending March 31st, 2023. Item 6, waive the second reading and enact an ordinance amending sections 8.20.830 and 8.20.890 and 8.20.900 of Title 8 of the MILLBRAE Municipal Code, providing for the collection of sewer charges on the county tax roll. This is an action item. And agenda item number 7, adoption of a resolution authorizing the city manager or designee to execute a professional service agreement with ECS Imaging, Inc. for Community Development Department scanning services. As an action item, approved by motion a request from Fiddler's Green in partnership for Strides for Life Colon Cancer Foundation for a street closure on the frontage road of El Camino Real on the 400 block of El Camino Real, Molly's 90th birthday and fundraiser event on May 7th, 2023. And pulling agenda item 9 and a motion and second for item 10, adoption of a resolution awarding a construction contract to Asphalt Surfacing, Inc. for the Upper Hillcrest Subbasin 4 pavement repair project and authorizing task order number 1 for construction management services under an on-call agreement with CSG Consultants. And if there is a motion or a second.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilman Pappen.
Second.
Thank you, Councilman Fung. If there are any comments? Seeing no comments, City Clerk, could you call the roll? Call the vote.
Councilmember Pappen?
Aye.
Councilmember Cahalan? Aye. Councilmember Fung?
Aye.
Mayor Snyder?
Aye.
Consent items 5, 6, 7, 8, and 10 passed by a vote of 4-0 with Vice Mayor Goodman excused.
Thank you. And for the public, if you live on the 300 blocks of Hazel on up to Ashton, this is a paving project on that one block right there on each of the 300 blocks. So please check out that agenda item. You'll be seeing that over the next couple of months. And now bringing back to agenda item number 9, adoption of a resolution approving the sale of the interim community center modular building and authorizing the city manager to execute related documents with the California Department of Housing and Community Development, HCD. And I believe we have a staff presentation or comments.
Well, Mayor, I'd be happy to open it up here and provide some information. So on February 28, 2017, as a result of the fire at the Recreation Center, the City Council purchased via Resolution 1706 and awarded Design Space Modular Buildings a contract in the amount of $1,184,607 for the interim community center that exists just west of City Hall here in the parking lot. Just for a little background, we did some research. The building was built in 1994 with a useful life of 25 to 30 years. So that would bring the useful life to 2019 or 2024. Now, in 2016, it was refabricated with then a useful life of about 10 years. So from 2016, 2017, for a 10-year additional life, that gets us to 2027. But as a result of the opening of the new recreation center that opened in June of 2022, last year, all recreation classes and activities have since been relocated, thus deeming these buildings effectively no longer needed for interim recreation uses. So we went out for bid through public service agencies and received a bid for the purchase of the building for $80,000. There is a need for, and we looked at it, I looked at the cost benefit. I looked at, can we use the space? We could certainly use the space. I looked at it as maybe, moving planning and building and some of our engineering functions over to that building and making a permit center out of it. But it needs some work. Working with Mr. Sam Batista, our Director of Engineering and Public Works, it definitely needs a new roof. Cost estimate was $250,000 for a new roof, which, then you start to say, okay, has it reached its useful life? And, kind of like a vehicle that's in an accident, have we totaled it, so to speak. But so, looking at the cost benefit, additional parking spaces, and working with PCE on installation of solar arrays on that parking, we will be adding solar arrays to the Chakotay Room, additional solar panels on the library building and to City Hall to try to get to net zero. And so using the parking spaces within the Civic Center and developing solar panels, on the rooftops of basically carports. You've probably all seen those in parking lots before. This will get us to net zero on the analysis. So anyway, open for questions, understand the cost benefit and kind of, anticipating probably some of the questions, but so I'll hand it over to the council and try to address any.
Thank you, City Manager. Questions or comments from council?
So you mentioned that the building has a useful life of how long?
So the research we did, council member, was 25 to 30 years on that building.
Okay, so 25 to 30 years on that building that has since been put up since 2016?
It was originally constructed in 94 and was refabricated in 2016-17.
Refabricated?
Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of like a rebuilt engine.
Refurbished.
It was the way it was explained to me.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. So I mean, what I was hoping is that we obviously have invested a, pretty good amount of resources, $1.18 million to construct this interim community center. I'm hoping, and based on my observations, I think we can certainly use a little bit more space within City Hall, for our staffing. I constantly see some of our engineers working out of the City Council room in there where we have our mailboxes. And just, space where our staff could use for office purposes. We have this facility, we invest, a lot of resources to it. I hate to see us dumping it for $80,000 when we've invested quite a bit of money on it. So we can certainly use that space for the purpose of our office space. In terms of the roof investment, I think, we need to look a little harder to see if we can find a way to economize the replacement of that roof. I think $200,000 plus to redo a roof. I think there might be room for improvement here. And certainly for solar, I would definitely support the installation of solar and photovoltaic arrays. But I think they could certainly be done even on the current structures. We can find ways to do that. So I'm hoping that we could reuse the space for greater purposes.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Pappen?
What can we get for the sale of these?
I'm sorry, Gina, I'm not sure we picked you up.
What can we get if they're sold?
So the bid came in at $80,000.
I'm hesitant to keep them at this point because, I mean, when we had our old recreation center before it moved or accidentally burnt down, I mean, it just becomes one thing after another so quickly as far as repairs go. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but am I hearing staff say in order for us to do the solar, we would do it over the parking lot? If you're looking at these portables and a new roof on top of that, and then solar on top of that, I think we're going to be set back somewhat. I think the costs will easily exceed the lifespan of this structure. So I would say move on. Let's look at what else we can do. Thankfully, with the new recreation center, we were able to move some staff over to the new building, so that kind of lessened the load here. And we have talked about investing in some way, improving City Hall at some point in time. I just think this may set us back cost-wise. It's $250,000 for a roof or somewhere near that. Additional costs are going to quickly follow. I think really the public needs the parking back at this point. And I would agree with the sale and just trying to move ahead with solar on our buildings, on our parking lots, and somehow improving City Hall. That would be my thought.
Thank you, Councilwoman. City Manager, when we were talking about this item, did you mention that even our City Hall complex has a certain number of parking places we need to provide?
Yes, Mayor, that is correct. So per our municipal code, it's one space per 300 square feet in our zoning code for office space. And so with this, obviously the interim use, we're deficient in that parking. And so if these buildings were sold and it was removed and we added parking, we'd be back in compliance. I believe there are, so it necessitate 40 parking spaces currently at City Hall. Mr. Mogeson, how many parking spaces do we have on site currently?
Could you repeat that for the record?
Yeah, so the lower parking lot at City Hall holds about 40 spaces, and the trailer's occupying about 30 right now. So it's occupying all the spaces in the other row, half the spaces on the row closest to the building, which are where the ramp is right now. So that's it's about 75% of the existing parking lot right now.
I can tell you now that we're back being more in person and I'm down here more often, I watch people try to pull into our parking lot, and even more difficult, try to figure out how to get out of our parking lot because it's so tight in there. Thank you. Councilwoman Cahalan.
I would imagine with the state of these portables right now, we're looking at the longer we have them, they're just going to continue to be repairs. And then if we wait longer to sell it, we're looking at getting even less for them, correct?
I would assume, yeah.
So I think that's a concern. Definitely hear the need for more space. So staff have more room to work. But looking at, the parking, the solar, and the additional incurred costs that we may have to continue to maintain this as it's aging is a concern.
Just out of question, is there, other than the roof, is there anything else that on the radar that requires imminent maintenance or repair?
Well, look, I did have a building inspector go inspect it, and the building inspector came back and said, yes, that the occupancy permit is still valid, so there are no major issues associated. So it is based on occupancy permit, it can be occupied for office use.
Good evening, Councilmember Fung. In regards to your question, our facilities staff also said that the HVAC system is really old and that needs to be probably rehabilitated. So they've been sitting up there for a long time and they need to be maintained.
They need to be maintained or replaced.
It sounded like they really needed to be replaced. They're just old units that have been given to the city along as part of the building.
Yeah, I was just hoping that, given the amount of constraint on staff space within the city hall, and we certainly have a growing city, right? I think space is certainly a concern. I was really hopeful that we could some way to improve that space to make it useful to us. Certainly parking is something we can always improve upon. We certainly have a parking space up on the library area where we have quite a bit of parking available. I'm a little torn, right? I certainly would hope that we could find ways to leverage the investment that we already made on this interim community center. Yeah, that's kind of where I stand on it.
Thank you, Councilman Fung. Go ahead, Councilman Kay.
Is it a single unit or is it all one or is it multiple? Could we look at keeping part of it for some expansion for staff and selling the other part?
So it's 8 different modulars that make up that building.
But I think the question was, could we keep a couple of sections and get rid of most of it? But the whole system is designed to work together, isn't it?
We could we didn't analyze that. I don't know, but perhaps Sam.
Can I say that I work in the recycling business, and one of my specialty areas is reuse of buildings. And the sheer concept of a modular building and a temporary building is the construction material quality. And it will have an end of life. And the longer we hang on to it, the more disposal costs are going to go up. And I think some of the original outreach, we had a couple of people who said, oh, sure, we'll take the building if you pay us to take it away. So we have either a potential of maybe it's worth $225,000, but needs $225,000 or more work on it to get a few more years out of it. And then at the end, we'll have lost any potential customers. And I did have staff to go look and see if we could see if Pajaro or some of the areas that have been subjected to severe environmental damages lately could use it, but couldn't move it that way. And the longer we hang on to it, the more expensive it will be. Most of that material is not recyclable. So it can't go into a mixed C&D construction and demolition program. So I am in line with Councilwoman Pappen that would have liked to have gotten more than $80,000, but we've gotten 6 years of use out of it. And we have this exciting project with Peninsula Clean Energy, who just went out on their press release that the contracts are signed. I think they're signed. Yes. So we can start seeing the solar installations going up and going toward net zero, which will give us an energy savings on that. So I'm ready to move forward.
Mayor, on that note, maybe just a little bit more information, if I may. So we were diligent before we went out for public bid. We contacted cities up and down the state of California that we knew were remodeling, facilities. Foster City, for example, as you know, they're remodeling their recreation facility, and thought that they might buy it. But just at the end of the day, as you mentioned, Pajaro, there were no takers.
So I appreciate staff going the extra mile because reuse obviously is best if we can. And here we have a gentleman from Hemet, I believe. So it'll be out in the desert. Rain won't be as much of an issue. And maybe they can get a little more life out of that roof out there. So I hear from 2 of us. I'm not sure. I can open it up to public comment. City Clerk, do we have anybody online? There are no slips here.
There's no comment on this item.
Okay, so closing public comment, bringing it back to council.
Move approval.
Thank you. We have a motion by Councilwoman Pappen.
Second.
Second by Councilwoman Cahalan.
Councilmember Pappen?
Yes.
Councilmember Cahalan?
Aye.
Councilmember Fung?
I would abstain.
Mayor Snyder?
Aye.
Consent item number 9 passed by a vote of 3 to 1-1 with Vice Mayor Goodman excused.
And I will say, staff, perfect timing, because I was at a couple of dinners last week. One was the Lions dinner, and I had Lions coming up and ask me, what's going to happen with that building? So your timing couldn't be more perfect. I couldn't say anything yet, so now we can. Thank you, and good luck to the gentleman from Hemet. Okay, next up, public hearing. This is agenda item number 11, a public hearing to review the 6th cycle housing element update, revisions in response to comments from the California Department of Housing and Community Development, otherwise known as HCD, consider self-certification and adoption of the 6th cycle housing element update, and authorize staff to submit the housing element update to HCD action. And I'm reading my notes here. We have received comments from the California Department of Housing and Community Development. And with that, I'm going to open public hearing now and then move straight to staff report and then bring it back to council comments. So the public hearing is now open.
Good evening. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. So we're excited to come back to you tonight with our revisions to the draft housing element. I'm going to start with some introductions this evening, and I'm going to hand it over.
I believe staff is working on getting things together.
We've got a PowerPoint tonight, but just I want to thank all of the planners here. If you could jump to the next slide. I want to thank all the planning staff for working on this. Roscoe Amata, our planning manager, Nestor Guevara, our associate planner. They've spent, could jump to the next slide, please. They spent a lot of time working and addressing the comments we got back from HCD. We've had this out. We brought it to Planning Commission in March. We've got their full support and their recommendation to the council tonight. And most importantly, I want to thank our consultants from Harrison Associates, Hida Mosesman and Erlanda Martinez, who have been working diligently on those comments and responding to those comments, doing the extra research to help us get to the point. So we're very excited about this tonight. And with that, I'm going to pass off the presentation to Hida.
Good evening,
Welcome.
Mayor. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Hita Mosesman. I'm the Vice President of Community Development and Housing for Harrison Associates, which is the city's consultant on the housing element. And we're here to present the status of the housing element and the revised housing element per HCD's findings and comments. And next slide, please. So the recommendation before you this evening is to review the housing element update revisions in response to comments from the California State Department of Housing and Community Development, or as HCD, as I'll refer to them in the presentation, and to adopt this revised version of the 6th cycle housing element update. And next slide. So by way of background, the housing element is an element of the city's general plan. Every state and, every city and county in the state of California is required to have a general plan to guide the community development of the jurisdiction over the long term. And the housing element is the only element of the general plan that needs to be certified by the state and has to be updated every 8 years. And this draft housing element that was prepared was sent to HCD in October, and they received a 90-day review period to review your document and to provide what's called findings, which is their version of comments on how compliant the document is with state law. And next slide, please. So this slide gives you sort of an overview of that initial process that got us here this evening, which is the initial submittal in October, their 90-day review period. They provided a findings letter. We had a call with HCD, at least one call, I think it was more to like two, to confirm the meaning of the findings and the requests for a revision to the housing element. And we made the revisions based on those conversations in coordination with HCD. The plan is to resubmit the document, and HCD gets a shorter review period this time of 60 days instead of 90 to review the revisions based on comments. And next slide, please. So this is sort of a timeline of where we are now. We took the document to the Planning Commission on March 20th. They reviewed the document. They voted to approve and send it to City Council for their approval. And we're here this evening to hold the public hearing on the revised version of the document. Our plan is to submit to HCD within 3 days to kickstart that next 60-day review period so they can review it and sort of get back to us with their assessment of those revisions. We expect their revisions by June 27th. Again, they get 60 days and expect certification by this summer. Next slide. So we wanted to review with you this evening the scope of the comments from HCD. And they generally fell into a few different categories. But the first sort of notable finding was the addition of additional programs that the city would implement to ensure that sites would be ready for development, facilitated for development, and that affordable housing was pursued. This is a pretty customary finding in our experience working with multiple jurisdictions around the state. I have not heard of one jurisdiction that did not get at least one findings letter from HCD. There's a request for more information and more programs and more actions, and that's universal throughout California in our experience. Some of the other comments were to provide further data and analysis on your community profile, like rents, housing tenure, overcrowding. It's not that the information wasn't in the housing element, they wanted more analysis of that information, and we've provided that. A lot of what they asked for were clarifications or additional, more granular information on things like land use, your local development fees. They just wanted to sort of confirm the cost of development fees as compared to the cost to develop units, which is, again, standard customary request from HCD. So more granular information rather than any new information that needed to be provided. And then statements about being consistent with the city's general plan that were made in the document, but it was requested that they be made in a different manner, if that makes sense. And next slide. Oh, lastly, the good news is that all of the sites were accepted by HCD. There was no rejection of any sites in the site inventory. So we provided enough substantial evidence in the document for those sites to be at least conditionally approved.
Hita, I know you're on a roll, but what she just said is amazing, because I know we play our Super Bowl every other Tuesday night and we don't celebrate touchdowns or grand slams, but that is a grand slam. The way HCD, as Hita mentioned, has been coming down in their comments, I mean, that is, guys, that's incredible. That is great work for all of us. So I know Nestor and the whole staff, Hita and her team, Darcy when she was here. So I wanted to provide special recognition to that outstanding accomplishment. Thank you.
And we really appreciate the partnership working with staff on this as well. That's what made the document, we believe, in a state that there were really not a lot of substantial comments or substantial revisions requested in this document. But to get even more specific about, and I think next slide, please, the responses to HCD comments in terms of the revisions that we made, and really getting granular in terms of chapters. We put the changes into two buckets, what we call the simple changes and then the essential changes. So the simple changes were things like in Chapter 1, we updated the introduction to clarify the consistency with the general plan. So the location of where that statement was made was changed, just to clarify that up front, and that was an HCD request. Again, your 2022 annual progress report was just prepared and accepted earlier, I think it was last month. And so that documentation wasn't available when we prepared the draft housing element back in October. So we did update Chapter 5 with your newest annual progress report information that will show building permits issued and finalized, as well as projects that were approved as well. And in Chapter 2, we added some additional analysis for cost burden households. Those are households that spend more than 30% of their gross income on housing costs. So there was some additional information, some additional analysis provided there. What we call more of the essential changes really had to do with housing mobility, which was really the theme from HCD in terms of the update. And when I say housing mobility, the sites are concentrated in your downtown area. That seems to be where development is happening and where developers are interested in developing close to the BART station, close to transit, close to the downtown. Because they are concentrated in one area of the city, HCD requested that we look at programs to provide housing mobility, meaning there would be opportunities for people to be able to live somewhere else in a new unit, somewhere else in the city. And these are things like accessory dwelling units, or as units become available, ensuring that information is out about where these units might be for people, so that we're not only planning for units or people to live anywhere in the next 8 years other than downtown. So we did add some programs, and I'll go over what those programs are in the next slide to give you more of an idea. But this is a requirement for legal compliance, is to show that there are opportunities for housing mobility throughout the community. Also, we, in Appendix B, which is the affirmatively furthering fair housing section, we added more analysis and data on things like cost burden and overcrowding, as I had mentioned before. There's some new state laws like SB 9 that apply to all jurisdictions throughout the state. We clarified language there. We looked at things like your development standards and how those might impact housing development. Again, it wasn't that that information wasn't included in the first draft, but they wanted additional information on those types of issues. So really the comments of note would be on the housing mobility side. And next slide, please. So these are the specific programs that were added to adhere to that requirement on housing mobility. So first would be a pilot city mortgage assistance program. That's program HIP 48. Then we have HIP 49, which is an additional bonus, density bonus incentives. So that would be above what the state already requires statewide. When you build a project that includes some affordable housing, developers are entitled to a bonus of density because they're including affordable units. So this would be looking at the potential for increasing that density above what the state already allows. And through your specific planning process, you did provide some upzoning and some increased density as well. So that's sort of in line with the planning process that you just went through. HIP 51 would be a housing mobility coordinator, and the thought here would be a shared resource, potentially through 21 elements. So it wouldn't just be a housing mobility coordinator dedicated to MILLBRAE specifically, but it would be a staff person through 21 elements that might work with a number of jurisdictions throughout the county, as housing mobility is a very big theme for most jurisdictions doing their housing element right now. HIP 52 is to provide new housing choices in lower density neighborhoods through incentives for SB 9 units in the R1 zone neighborhoods. Again, this is incorporating, this is a state law that allows for single-family lots to be subdivided under certain conditions. So this program would allow for more housing mobility because additional units could be encouraged in single-family areas. It doesn't approve any project. It would be providing incentives, and those would have to be looked into and determined after the housing element is certified. HIP 53 would be by right approval on reuse sites, and HIP 54, tools for financing infrastructure and development. These could be tax increment financings like EIFDs or other tools that would allow for those infrastructure improvements to encourage development. And next slide, please. And with that, I want to thank you for your time. I'm here with Orlando Martinez, who's our project manager at Harris on this, and I'm going to ask Orlando to join me at the podium, and we're available to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. So what we're going to do is get questions from council for staff, then we'll open up to public hearing. City clerk, you'll keep an eye on Zoom calls, and then we'll come back, close the public hearing, and further discussion for that. So council comments. Councilwoman Pappen.
Thank you for all your hard work and efforts on this. Question. We are all deeply concerned about providing this extremely low housing. We need it desperately. We have a 15% requirement now. How do we up that to like 20%? Is that done in this document, or do we do that separately?
That would be a separate process. Typically, what you would do is you would update your inclusionary housing study that was done not too long ago, or just a couple of years ago. That study would show basically financial feasibility of market rate development. The only limitation that you have on an inclusionary requirement is that if it's above 15% for very low and low combined, not including moderate, then you do have to prepare a feasibility analysis for HCD's review to show that that requirement would not discourage market rate development because of a lack of financial feasibility.
This is somewhat confusing for us because state SB 35 gives them a huge bonus already. So does that come into the analysis here? Because we're only able to get 15%. They get a huge bonus with no additional affordability. So I'm somewhat confused as to, this seems counterproductive for those of us cities like ours. So we cannot, the reason they can invoke SB 35 is because we haven't met this. Yet it seems like HCD is really making it impossible for us to get this type of units in our city. Am I correct in my analysis here?
It does seem very counterintuitive, I agree with that. I think it comes down to financial feasibility.
And how quickly can we look at that? Because it really is a gold mine here. The developers are making a fortune in just these recent projects because of our location, because of transit and everything like that. I don't think that's a problem. So staff, I'd be very interested in that.
As long as you could show financial feasibility, you have the discretion to raise the inclusionary requirement above 15% for very low and low, as long as the numbers pencil for market rate development. If you have that in hand, you're able to raise the limit. It would just require some coordination with HCD and presenting that analysis to them. Inclusionary studies can take as little as 12 weeks to prepare.
Hello. That sounds good. Okay, well, I would hope that we can get there. And we we'll get past this housing element, but we are allowed to update at any point.
Yes, and so if there is another findings letter submitted by HCD to the city, you can add that as a program. We've seen other jurisdictions do that to raise the inclusionary requirement, or at least to look at the feasibility of doing that.
And I would like to know immediately if they come back at us again. Our new assembly member has determined that even the governor's office is unaware. The governor himself is unaware of what HCD is doing as far as going back at cities with new things. So we've put a lot of effort into this. Hopefully we can move forward here. I do think there's a typo here on the age section. Sorry about that. It reads, MILLBRAE residents are overall older than they were in the past. The median age increased from 41.5 in 2000 to 43 in 2019. Does it seem backwards?
Well, we're going to have to look at that, and
Okay,
not to pass the buck in any way, shape, or
No
form.
problem.
The 21 Elements prepared a couple of sections that we incorporated into the analysis. Those were already funded by the city, and we didn't go back and do an audit of their analysis. And that chapter 2 would be one of those chapters, but we will certainly look at it to make sure it's correct.
You bring up the one slide on H4. You had HIP 48 through 50. There you go. So some of these here, the what is meant by reuse sites? Number 53.
Yeah, so as you all are aware, there was a fifth cycle housing element that also included a sites inventory. So any site that was in the fifth cycle sites inventory that is now on the sixth cycle, it's sort of an incentive for developers to use the sites that have been in past sites inventories.
And just to add to, so any non-vacant site that you used in your fifth cycle, the law changed basically for housing elements. If you have a site that you used in the fifth cycle that was non-vacant, and that could even be a parking lot, basically greenfield vacant land is the only thing that's considered vacant by the state. So any non-vacant parcel that was included in your fifth cycle, if you're including it in your sixth cycle, you have to rezone for by right development, meaning there's sort of a guarantee that as long as certain minimum standards are met, that a developer could come and build housing on that site. And again, that's state law. It wasn't a program that we necessarily crafted. We were just calling it out very clearly as a program in the housing element.
And the program, the mortgage assistance program, who funds that? Who's expected to fund that?
So that program specifically is something that I believe the city has already been looking at, specifically for city employees. So we just wanted to document that, but it would be funded by the city.
Yeah, so I can help on that. So we picked this up from the city of San Bruno that for, I think the last maybe 30 years or so, they've had an effective program that assists their employees with mortgage assistance to buy homes locally. So as I understand the program, the funding comes from some of the CalPERS retirement fund program to help offset and assist with mortgage. So we're talking with Andy Mogensen, our community development director. We would like to not only open this to city employees, but also school district employees for MILLBRAE Elementary School District and the high school district and special districts, because they all have the retirement funds that are used in other cities that have this program as the equity percentage that helps offset that cost to get an employee into housing.
Thank you, and I just want to go really fast here to let everybody else talk. 49 additional density bonus incentives. I think SB 35 and a whole bunch of laws are already pushing that.
We're taking away our power.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would just be increasing the percentage of allowable units beyond the, like what the code states, and that would just increase the amount of affordable housing.
And if I may for a little bit, this is, Councilmember Fung has brought this up in the past, and this is the program that we would, city council adopts, we would look into and pursue that.
And just two more quickie, allow additional affordable housing in PD zones.
In planned development zones that we're trying to abbreviate.
And just for a note for our staff, Housing Mobility Coordinator, I think MTC, I think there's like a program, well, I think it might be for rentals or something like that. But I think they're working on a regional program for people to access affordable homes. We don't have to tell HDC that, but we should probably try to take advantage of that. So somebody would put in a zip code and it would lead them to affordable homes. We would probably want to be a part of that program so that we can assist people in finding affordable residents within our city. So if we could make a note for staff on that. Okay. Thank you very much. And again, let us know how they treat us. We're trying.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Fung is biting at the bit here. Go ahead.
That's okay. It's, so between 49 and 50, I think, I can think of conceptual-wise, what would be a strategically smart thing for us to do. First of all, it is true that many of the state legislation on the housing bill recently has taken a lot of the local control away. Now, but what I think we ought to do in terms of priority is to earn those control back somehow by looking for ways to incentivize development in certain strategic areas that we believe as a city that makes sense, and we have to agree on that, obviously, at the same time providing those density bonus incentives to build more affordable by design units. And then at the same time, coming up with an inclusionary rate at those particular locations that is above and beyond the current 15%. Some of the other jurisdictions have done this, what they call a local density bonus program, whereby you give a certain amount of density bonus in locations where you want this the local density bonus program to be enacted and be effective on. And then you can go above and beyond your 15% inclusionary housing, 20, 25, 30, whatever that might be, that number might be. And we can even categorize it in a certain way. For example, if we are low on the very low income that is required, the lowest AMI rate, then we can have that be a part of that program to achieve these very strategic goals so that we can meet those requirements as they come from HCD and also the RENA goal as well on a yearly basis. So that's more than likely would be the way to go to try to deal with these issues. So I think that would probably take care of most of the 49 and 50 in terms of their comment. And I think we can certainly do that given our downtown area and how we want to make sure that will play into our economic development plan as well, to promote greater land use and more downtown development opportunities so that we can build more affordable housing and affordable by design housing. So I think that's certainly one area where I think we should look into. Could you go into a little bit more about 53 by right approval on reuse site? Might have some idea on that.
That's a state law requirement that changed since your last housing element cycle. So basically, if you said that one site in the city would be developed with housing during your fifth cycle housing element, and it wasn't, and you're using that site again for your sixth cycle housing element, it has to be zoned for by right development because it's the second time it's being used. So it's either you can't use that site, or you can use it, but you have to rezone for by right. So it's a legal requirement.
So, but when they say rezone by right, is that the only requirement, or could it be, let's say we designate certain site within our local ordinance where we can do a ministerial approval, given they meet certain local requirement, right? Then that would satisfy that requirement so as to guarantee that development can proceed.
Yeah, the city can definitely zone for by right, even if it's not a recycled site from your fifth cycle housing element. HCD would like to see that. So that would be a benefit to the city if that's something the city feels is appropriate.
So that also ties into sort of local density bonus program, if we were to contemplate one of them, where those areas previously needs to go through perhaps discretionary hearing in some way that does not guarantee necessarily an entitlement. Whereas if you fit local ordinance within the box, so to speak, then the process can be faster and more, I don't want to use guarantee, but it's more smoother process as they proceed with the development and seeking entitlement, so as to promote greater housing opportunities.
Can I ask a question for what the councilman just said? So these are the responses to HCD's comments that we have now added into the current plan. And we're asking for clarification. You're going to tell us if we need some additional clarification in the existing document. I watched the Planning Commission meeting, and I was kind of surprised at how little they actually pushed back on anything. But what would we have to do what the councilman just suggested?
We could add a program to the housing element, and that could be added now. It may delay when you would submit to HCD to start that next 60-day time
And this
period.
program would be a by right program?
It can be.
It's slash ministerial?
Yes.
So let me just go on the record here. I'm very uncomfortable with by right, and I'm very uncomfortable with ministerial. So I hear you, but I also just came back from Cal Cities and then at Progress Seminar to be with a lot of other electeds and housing advocates pushing for certain things when we have our own unique city situations. We have one main road out of town on the south side, on the east side. We have this, we have that, we have huge this. So I'd be really hesitant to hold our program, hold this up, to try to come up with something that might be a reasonable by right. By reasonable meaning reasonable for us, the city, for our existing residents, and potential new developers. Now, if that comes back as a goal-setting item, that's something that we want to look into, we can always add to that. Could we always go back to HCD? They've approved this, yay, we're done. We can start actually building things instead of doing documents. But we could come back with that program if it proved to be necessary.
Yes, and the city can establish programs even after you adopt your housing element.
I don't want the state telling us what we should be doing. They've done enough of that.
The only caveat I just wanted to clarify is that for those recycled sites from your fifth cycle housing element, it is required by law that those are rezoned for by right
So
development.
I think the city manager was trying to come back. So for how many of those sites do we have and what would we have to do?
4 sites.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, there are 4 sites.
4 sites.
Yeah, 4 in number, yeah.
Go ahead, Councilman.
So, and I heard you loud and clear that we're done listening to the state telling us what to do. So instead, we should tell the state what we're going to do, right? Establishing our own local density bonus program is our way to tell the state what we're going to do to meet those requirements, and then also tell the development community how they can obtain entitlement in the area where we want to see development done in ways that we want to set those parameters. Now, and I think, first of all, in order to meet those comments from HCD, we can say, shall we say, we're working on considering a local incentive density ordinance that we can come later as we discuss, right? We're considering such a program. And then as we move forward here locally, then we can look for those objective standards so that we can put this in place. Is that possible?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, all these programs, are subject to city council approving it.
Right.
So it doesn't mean they're gonna happen. We're just saying staff is gonna come up with an idea, present it to council, and then, for your
That we will
approval.
consider them.
Right, yeah. Also, I just wanted to clarify, so all these programs, they are our response to wanting to create housing mobility. I think we had a conversation about doing that regionally as well.
That's right.
And HCD calls it a suite of programs to do this. The alternative isn't very pretty. That would be upzoning R1 neighborhoods, which we also talked about. So in having conversations with HCD, we said, that doesn't really make sense for the city. It's a small city, all of that. And so they recommended that we come with a suite of programs, which includes 48 through 54. And these can be changed if you want to make a recommendation. And all of these would be brought back by staff to city council. And of course, it would depend on your approval.
Now, you just mentioned that they want a more regional strategic approach in terms of housing, and they want us to be a part of that. I remember having that discussion with our community development director on this. Hardboard does have a regional program where they collaborate with the city to apply for the LHTF grant program from the state, where they could do preservation of housing. And I think that is something we should actively pursue as a city, as we have certain amount of resources within our, what do you call it, Affordable Housing Fund? Is that correct?
Our affordable housing fund currently stands at about $2 million.
Right, so there are opportunities that we should explore and how to work regionally with, for example, a hardboard, housing endowment, right? To come up with a program to preserve more affordable housing and therefore making them more available, right? And I think that should be also a part of our response to the HCD comment as well.
Councilman, I'm sorry. And myself, you mentioned a grant program. We didn't catch what that was.
It's called LHTF. I don't know the
Local Housing,
LHTF,
Local Housing Trust Fund.
Local Housing Trust Fund. Thank you.
Established housing trust funds in California can apply. It's a matching funds grant. So they will match what deposits the entity has on hand.
Correct.
Does
And
it
it's a
have
scoring program too.
Does it, just so that I know, does it prioritize or give priority to PECs, priority equity areas, priority equity communities? Would we even have a chance? I like the idea. I would love to see us do housing preservation work, but I don't know, all too often with my other hats, we don't get the funding.
So not to get too complicated into housing finance, it is a competitive grant and it is scored. There are more entities that apply for it than there is funding. Typically, they want to see acquisition and rehab programs. So where you're acquiring an existing, maybe an older affordable housing project, you get a developer to come in, substantially rehabilitate it, and that developer's applying for other funding sources. You have to present what you're going to spend the money on and up front. And so you have to have your programs ready, and how project ready your projects are is how you score the most competitively. So that particular grant seems to be more focused on construction and substantial rehabilitation, just to inform on that.
It was my understanding that you do not require having a project in order to apply for that grant program, and that it could also be used for preservation. For example, existing market rate housing, for example, that could be purchased for permanently deeded affordable housing.
My understanding is that if it involves rehabilitating it rather than just acquiring it and recording covenants on it. The other thing to note is that there's a possibility they're ending that grant after 2024. So I just, not to be the bearer of bad news, but
Well, that much more reason for us to get it now, right?
I will say that the REAP 2.0 grant funds that will be coming out, they're about 3 times more than REAP 1.0. They're given regionally. ABAG will be receiving the funding, and then different jurisdictions and county consortiums can apply for it. I mean, our recommendation would be to partner with 21 Elements and try to pool resources. They're doing that. The Orange County Council of Governments, like 21 Elements, is a smaller, manageable regional entity. And they've already, for their entities that are in the SCAG region, have started to pool resources to do developer and fair housing outreach, to develop some standard documents on zoning changes, on objective design standards, and also commissioning studies on how to encourage the redevelopment of commercial into residential. So, but you know, this is a lot, these are a lot of programs that the housing element has, and a lot of other jurisdictions are being asked to do the same exact thing. And so doing it on a regional basis, sort of like the housing mobility, there's some opportunities and there's funding to do it through the REAP 2.0, working with ABAG and 21 Elements. So the city's not funding this on their own.
City
You can also
getting
use it for
credit.
projects and preservation, sorry.
Would the city be getting credit then towards our RENA numbers, or it goes to some other jurisdiction?
As long as the units are here, you'll get credit for it. And so the REAP 2.0 funding, it can be used to produce units as well, unlike REAP 1.0.
I do believe we should try all of those approaches, you know, between the LHTF versus some of the other ones that you just mentioned. I do know that the Heart Board here locally in San Mateo County had successfully obtained state grant through an application that they did jointly with City of Daly City, San Mateo, and East Palo Alto. They've gotten over $5 million of LHTF funding with this program. So, and I think this is, there's definitely a lot of desire and will to apply for these grants, and we have seen successes in these applications. So I don't think we should leave these on the table here. We should certainly capture these opportunities.
Thank you, Councilman. Before we go forward, but before we go, did we just ask for an additional HIP 55 in there, or are these all things that fit in within HIP 48 to 54?
So I wanted to point out that there is a program in the housing element, Orlando can probably tell me what the number is, that the city will agree to support a certain number of grant applications as they come in or as they are presented. And so I do believe that this could fall under that program, because that program is fairly broad. Grant programs tend to change every year with the state budget changing. And so I think having that flexibility would be really beneficial for the city, because you can leverage what is coming online now and what you would be able to qualify for, and then partner with other regional entities to leverage the most amount of funding.
The reason I brought that up, staff, if we're making a motion to approve tonight, making sure if we've got any additional changes, if you're working on making sure we're capturing that.
Yeah. Sorry, Mayor, go ahead.
Please go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think we need to put in perspective what we're accomplishing here. So in this cycle, our RENA target or RENA numbers are 2,200. This housing element allows for 3,500, at least 3,500. So don't lose sight and perspective of that. These are implementation strategies that we can use to implement those number of units and the distribution of those units. I think, as Hida said, as we progress, as laws change, we can come back and we can amend these, we can add programs, you know. So think of the housing element not as a static document, but it's a dynamic working document that we'll be using between now and 2030. So just, keep that in perspective, that we allow up to 3,500 housing units, perhaps more, as we implement this and incentivize, and we look at, as Councilmember Pappen had mentioned, looking at the studies to increase our level of very low and low, up to 20% or whatever that may be. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that, Mayor. As we get into this, don't lose perspective of what we're trying to achieve with this housing element. And I say that because I recommend that we don't delay. So if there's any items we want to get, you've probably seen the heavy-handedness of HCD. Everybody in the United States knows the heavy-handedness of HCD. Some of the lawsuits, litigation, our neighbors to the south. So anyway, just keep that in
Again,
mind.
so just to bring this back, what I've heard then, that the suggestions that Councilman Fung would like, you think fits within an existing program, with perhaps the exception, let's just be really clear here, about doing a more by right ministerial project? Or does that also fit within one of the existing?
I don't think it has to be by right ministerial. I mean, we can certainly craft that program, but I think as part of this response to the HCD program is that we're going to look into some sort of a legislation and ordinance locally here to satisfy these requirements and provide more housing opportunities. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think a lot of the programs are all meant to achieve, like the city manager said, your arena. You do have to rezone the recycled fifth cycle sites, the 4. Those have to be zoned by right. We don't have a program about looking into doing more than that in terms of by right. But the city council, the planning commission, is free to modify, change, add programs throughout the cycle, because the annual progress report is another way of measuring your progress. And so they are going to want to know in the annual progress report, was this project a result of a specific housing element program? HCD is also recommending mid-cycle reviews, which means you'd sit down with HCD after 4 years, so they could see your progress there. So I think that the city manager's right. I think this is more, to some degree, it has to be a living document because funding changes, interest rates go up, market factors change, and so you may have to tweak some of the programs as you go forward as those changes occur. And I do believe it's HIP 31 that addresses grants. And we don't specify exactly what grants. So there's really a broad range of looking, the city is free to look at those grants that, work for projects in the city where you feel that you can qualify and have a good chance of that funding.
Sorry about that.
My questions have already been answered.
Okay, then let me bring back. So we already have an SB 9 ordinance. We are working right now on, and I always get my subjective and objective design guidelines. We're working on that right now, and that's going to be coming to us in this next fiscal year. By the end of 2023 is when we'll get those design guidelines, correct?
Well, we're proposing in the new budget, starting fiscal year 23-24, to fund a objective residential design.
Okay, and I'm assuming.
I'm not going to say them guidelines anymore because they're not guidelines, objective design requirements.
Just, are we going to still see 9-foot tall crawl spaces in those objective design guidelines?
Can I add
On
real
that, go ahead, Councilwoman.
Yeah, I don't think there's a need for us to recreate the wheel here. Many cities have already done what we're trying to do here. I would like us to see what we can pull from other cities to meet our, what are we calling them?
Objective design guidelines.
Objective design
Yeah,
elements.
I shouldn't have brought that up, but I know that we're working on that.
But yeah, I just don't want to see us going out, we have to start from scratch when we know for a fact other cities are already doing it. Paste and cut, and let's get that done. Thank you.
So Councilwoman Pappen and Fung brought up a lot of the questions I had, but I've had this life experience. So I'm going to make sure that we're protected. So my house in Mountain View has 2 low-income projects, one built inside the middle of it. It was City of Mountain View, over 50,000, so they could have CDBG funds. And what they did not do, this is called Ginston Terrace. It's 104 units of low-income senior housing. And most of the housing is actually occupied by recent immigrants to California, or at least back in the day, because the home country that they came from, Ukraine, had a very good connection. And they were getting on their Section 8 housing lists in the old country, working through a network in Marin County and getting settled into Mountain View. The other project, the Marcy Freeland Place, was a redevelopment rehab of an old apartment complex. Took up a whole corner. My house is on a big section of Mountain View, Rengstorff, California, on there. Gorgeous project. Really lovely to see that. But again, they had CDBG funds. I did my investigation of CDBG funds into this county. And what happens is the county collects most of those funds, not for the 4 big cities, and then works with local housing NGOs. My experience has been where I used to live, every NGO that you could possibly want exists down there and is active and connected. And you come up to MILLBRAE, and we don't have a strong relationship with Mid-Peninsula Housing, which owns both of those 2 projects, Instant Terrace and Marcy Freeland. We don't have, I don't even know the names. If I see them, I say, oh, yeah. We don't have that relationship. So I guess long story short, within this housing element, do we have an item that says we need to develop a relationship with them? Now, I went to MidPen because I did work with them. I was on the board of my HOA and they were on the board, and said, what about housing preservation? This was a few years ago. They're saying, we're not into housing preservation right now. We just want to build new. But I think I think it's turned a little bit, and now housing preservation is coming back up. But, so 2 points. If we do housing preservation, do we have a program that will allow MILLBRAE residents to first qualify? If they're getting moved out of their housing for whatever reason, can they qualify? I would like to see that if we don't have that. Not that I want to hold up the housing element, but when you look at Anton Apartments, for the 8 units that they're demolishing to build 19, those people who are losing their homes, whose children go to our schools, will not be able to stay here. And I feel that we should do more to make sure that they can stay here. And then the other thing is, do we have a program that can help our low-income MILLBRAE residents figure out how to get signed up to all of these? And maybe that's Gina's program. I'm sorry, Councilwoman Pappen mentioned MTC, but if we look at that state loan program that just came out, that was the intent to get more people of color to buy homeowners, and 58% were Caucasians, and most of them were in Sacramento. I have a real mistrust of regional programs. I'm getting very old and grumpy now. I just have had these experiences where some people are really good at learning how to work the system, and many people are not, because why would they? So are we doing what we can to help our residents work the system?
So Mayor, you're throwing a lot at us.
I am.
And I think what you're getting into is the implementation of things.
Okay.
If we had land availability, trust me, we have relationships with MidPen and they'd be here on our doorstep yesterday to build. The biggest issue, and I think that one of the assembly members this last weekend at the Progress Seminar brought it up, land availability, the ability to assemble property is the biggest constraint to housing production. Cities do not build housing. We create the opportunity to build housing, and that's what we're doing with this housing element. Now, the different programs and various programs, I do think, what you have up here are the added programs, not every single program in the housing element. And so I do think that we have opportunities to think creative as a city, to lead as a city, and develop programs to incentivize. As we are now have our development impact fees and our Nexus study for commercial linkage for affordable housing. I think we need to, work on our goals a week from this Saturday, perhaps bring the study back to increase it to 20%. And so I think there are a lot of good things here. And I think that, again, that's what I mentioned. I don't want to lose sight of what our objective is this evening versus the implementation of the various programs, funding sources, financing mechanisms. HEART, is one of those that can help us get there. So as we implement, we will be bringing programs back, to the city as we grow our funding sources. And hopefully, I've been a big advocate of bringing back redevelopment law since it was eliminated back in 2012. The state of California needs to do that. Maybe we can be progressive to, I know we have an assembly member that had mentioned that also as well. Anyway, just, we're programs and we don't want to lose sight of what
Okay.
we're trying to do
I
tonight
hear
with our,
you.
with our
I hear you.
element
Staff,
that we
you've
can't
heard what
implement.
my number one desire is, that if people are losing their homes here, they have the opportunity to
Oh,
stay here.
yeah, that was the other thing I wanted to address, and maybe our city attorney can, so there are laws right now for relocation. And I believe those relocation laws require the equivalent or better relocation, and the law says it has to be within the jurisdiction to the greatest extent possible. So,
My right arm doesn't work. I will get back to the council with more detail on relocation requirements. But I think that when you say preservation, I think you're really talking about relocating, finding other housing opportunities.
I think that's part of it. For me, what preservation means, and for the public, that if there's an apartment complex, for example, that gets purchased and they kick everybody out and then they upgrade the building, we're not even talking about condo conversion, we're upgrading the building and they up the rents. Now, the people who lost their homes couldn't afford the new rents. And this happened starting about 10 years ago, big time in San Mateo, City of, and in Redwood City. And I happened to have been in some of those as a Red Cross volunteer, so I watched what happened to these people. And I don't want that's happening
That is
to our people.
Those are relocation requirements, and we'll
Okay.
get back to you.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, though.
1 second then. So I would, if you've got that staff, then I'm happy. I also know, and I know you've heard me, that we are now an equity focus area, which means something in San Mateo County, because San Mateo County used the cost of housing percentage by income, and I know you used the right term and I won't use it, but we have that now. Have we included that in our area? Because that's largely, not all of our apartments and not all of our condos, but largely a lot of our apartments along El Camino Real and up through to Magnolia on that. So I don't know if that helps us, hurts us, gives us some additional tools. To me, it means points in a grant application on that. Go ahead, Councilwoman.
I'm trying to clarify what the mayor was asking for here. I believe she's asking for the developer comes in, they relocate, not the city.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
I
the
wanna be
developer.
very,
That is
very
correct.
clear on that.
Pardon me?
I want to be very clear on that.
We'll get back to you.
Okay.
Clarify what they're-
Okay. So Councilwoman Helen, hopefully we didn't take all of your questions. Okay, you're good? Let me open it up to comments from the public. I have no paper.
This is a formal hearing, so, yeah, would you open?
Yep.
Yeah,
I opened the public hearing at the beginning.
great,
Yeah.
okay.
We're trying this new way, City Attorney. We get it done in the beginning and then we'll close it at the end. So opening up for public comments, I have no slips. Do we have anybody online?
We have Nathan Chan.
Okay, Mr. Chan, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much for this opportunity to address the city council tonight. And sorry I couldn't be there in person. I really like this housing element. I'm really proud to have participated in reviewing it at multiple stages. I am a little concerned with the request from the staff to self-certify this element. HCD, at least from my understanding, has made clear that only HCD can determine whether a housing element has met all the standards. I think our housing element is good. I don't see any reason why we should invite a conflict with HCD by trying to do something that we don't have the authority to do, especially since it should only take 60 days before at most 60 days before we get the final approval. I think this element is good. Let's not take any unnecessary risks here. Thank you.
Thank you, Planning Commissioner Chan. City Manager, do you want to explain that, the self-certifying component?
I'll explain it, but Nathan Chan probably won't like my answer, so I'll have the Community Development Director come up.
Yeah, I call it belt and suspenders. It's really an untested legal theory, but I don't think it's going to hurt, and I don't think we want HCD to certify this housing element, so it's identified in the resolution tonight. I say we do both efforts. We want HCD to certify this. We think they will. But in case they don't, we have that added in the resolution tonight. So that's how I describe it, as belt and suspenders. I don't see how HCD is going to care either way, especially if they certify the housing element.
That was going to be my answer, by the way.
City Clerk, do we have any other comments from the public?
I do not see any other hands raised
Okay.
online.
Giving a few more seconds, closing public comment, bringing it back to closing public comment, closing public hearing, bringing it back to City Council. Council members, any other questions, concerns, and where do you feel about this self-certify? If you're okay with the motion.
Move approval with a prayer.
Thank you, Councilwoman Pappen.
Do we need to put in any of those discussions that we have previously among the council members and to incorporate it in the next round?
Yeah, I can say with certainty that, yes, Madam Mayor, those policies are in there. We do have them. And I'm very confident that we have covered them. It's in there. So I think we're in good shape.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't memorize the whole
That's
thing.
all right. But again, this is a living document, and these programs, we're going to be coming back to you with most of these items at some point during the cycle. So this was not the end. You're going to be hearing from us frequently on these programs, and we're going to be going into detail about a lot of them as we come forward for all the different
I just don't want to have to go through the 7th round of comment.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the motion.
You mean, and I thought from now on, all we would be getting would be climate change stuff. Okay, still more housing.
I'll second.
Second by Councilman Fung.
And the one typo, can we? That's okay.
That's fine. Second, maker of the second, is that okay?
Yeah, second.
That they'll fix that section that may be back to.
Subject to the typos?
No, it really might be an interpretation of how Nexus 21, how the group did their study, is how I took it. There might be an interpretation of what was stated in the report, clarification. So we just make sure it's perfect. Okay, City Clerk, could you call the vote?
Councilmember Pappen.
Yes.
Councilmember Cahalan. Councilmember Fung.
Aye.
Mayor Snyder.
Aye.
The motion to approve the sixth cycle housing element update revisions in response to the comments from the California Department of Housing and Community Development, HCD, consider self-certification and adoption of the sixth cycle housing element update and authorize staff to submit the housing element update to HCD passed by the vote of 4-0 with Vice Mayor Goodman excused.
Congratulations, staff, and to our consulting team. How come this doesn't feel painful enough? Or did I just jinx us? Anyway, thank you and congratulations. And I had heard that when the comments came back, they were pretty good. So well done to everybody, city manager, all the staff that worked on this. Congratulations. And let's hope that, yes, how did Councilwoman Pappen put it, with prayers?
Yeah, Mayor, just if I may, take a little bit of time and some closing comments
Please.
here, because yeah, as city manager, you get all the glory when it was really the team. Nestor, our associate planner back there, Roscoe, and all the great work that he's done over the last couple of years. Andy picking up the ball, Darcy when she was here, our previous community development director. There's a lot of work that goes into this, and I think you all know how difficult it has been in California. And Hida and everybody at Harrison Associates, the expertise that they've brought. This is a big deal, and it does seem easy, but it's easy because of all the great work, over the past couple of years that all the staff and team out here have done. And so it's a great thing for MILLBRAE tonight. And I would say, if HCD's listening, this is a real housing element. It isn't like to the neighbors of the north that we, that we read in the newspaper that have parcels in the Bay and everything else. This is a legitimate, implementable housing element that is going to meet the needs of the region, of MILLBRAE, goals of HCD, newly implemented laws and the objectives of the state of California legislation to produce housing. And I'm really, really proud of this and happy. And I can't take the credit. I mean, I'm proud of the staff and you all, and we're going to implement this. And as we know, I mean, this is exciting for MILLBRAE. So as you can tell, I'm passionate about what I do, but this is great.
Well, and it is all that we hear about when we go out to these conferences now that they're back in person. So yay, great to have it go forth, do good work. Thank you. Moving on to existing business, this is item number 12, and it is the MILLBRAE Homeless Engagement Local Program, now called HELP, and it's a quarterly update. This is an informational item. And I got to tell you, because when I was out in DC, I bragged about this program. I was with transportation people, and then I bragged about this both in Sacramento and in Santa Rosa. So I've already forwarded the staff report out.
Thank you for that. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. So the item before you, as mentioned tonight, is the quarterly update for the MILLBRAE Homelessness Engagement Local Program. And as you know, the city's very successful homelessness pilot program ended in December of 2022. However, the city secured funding to continue the program with funding from the Working Together to End Homelessness Grant Program funding that was available by the County of San Mateo. And so the program now operates under the acronym HELP, and it will be funded through June 2024. The presentation tonight is going to be conducted by Program Director for Life Moves, Deanna Garcia, and she joins us virtually, so I'm going to give her the floor at this time.
Hi, everyone. First time doing this virtually as a panelist, so please let me know if there's any weird tech issues. But
You're coming in great
otherwise,
so far.
that's great to hear. So we do have a presentation that goes along with this. So if it's okay, I'll go ahead and share my screen. Let me figure out how to do that. There we go. Okay. Let's get a slideshow here. Perfect. All right. Does that look good to everyone? I don't know if you guys can see it.
Yes, we can.
We can see it.
Okay,
Yeah, it looks great.
amazing. Great. So this is our outreach team. Again, my name is Deanna Garcia. I am currently the interim program director for the Life Moves homeless outreach teams. One of those homeless outreach teams is what we now call HELP, the MILLBRAE outreach program, essentially. I also oversee the homeless outreach team. That's the 5 regional case managers throughout San Mateo County. One of those case managers does support in the day shifts at MILLBRAE as well. We oversee the police-funded outreach programs through San Bruno and South San Francisco, and something called a THAP program, which is a transitional housing access program out of the Guadalupe River and Camet area in San Jose. So let's see here. Some of the overview of this specific program, the MILLBRAE Homelessness Engagement Local Program, or HELP. They conduct daily outreach to individuals experiencing homelessness in MILLBRAE. Generally, it's within the BART station of MILLBRAE, and there's like a 5-mile surrounding area. But we're also looking at trying to expand throughout all of MILLBRAE as calls for service come in. HELP collaborates with multiple community teams to provide holistic and tailored services to clients experiencing unsheltered homelessness in the city of MILLBRAE. So we really just take a look at what the client's needs are. We meet them where they're at, whether that's at an encampment, out in the streets, in front of a business, if they're in their vehicle. We serve anyone who is seeking services and experiencing homelessness. So this could be singles, couples, or families. And again, this is out of the MILLBRAE BART station area primarily. So the big focus is being there when that last train hits around 1:30 a.m. So to talk a little bit about staffing, we do have 2 full-time case managers currently working the evening and night shifts, outreaching in that area. Generally speaking, they're available on Tuesdays a little bit earlier in the day, from 12:30 to 11:30, because we do have some mandatory meetings that take place on Tuesday a little earlier. But then Wednesday through Friday, they're working, 10-hour shifts. They're working from 3:30 p.m. to 2:30 a.m., taking a little lunch break here, but overall being out there in the community, trying to offer this support. That does fluctuate a little bit. So sometimes if we need some help on Mondays, they can support us there as well. The staffing, so some of the data that we presented previously was funding that came from the San Mateo Working to End Homelessness funding as well as city funding. So that was previously why we called it like the BART pilot program or the MILLBRAE pilot program. But currently this new term, if I'm not mistaken, is through the city funding now. So that is why we've transitioned it to help. And Isabel, I do want to pass it along to you for the second half of this slide, if you wanted to talk a little bit about some of the other funding sources that we're seeking.
Yes, thank you, Deanna. And so, yeah, we did receive funding from the County of San Mateo. They actually allocated our ARPA money, and they had a lot of requests, and were able to fund our program to continue as it was during the original pilot program. We did ask for additional funding, but they had requests from various cities. And so with that in mind, that we need additional resources, we continue to engage in efforts, ongoing efforts to seek additional funding to enhance the city's current program. Particularly right now, we are working on a state grant. It's an encampment resolution fund grant, and it requires a very holistic approach to dealing with homelessness, providing services, temporary shelter, and ultimately permanent shelter. And so we've been working together with the County of San Mateo and Life Moves to develop this grant application. We've been doing it over the last couple months, and it's going to be submitted to the state by April 30th of this year. The grant application, as it was written, will seek funding for 2 additional Life Moves case managers, and this would be to cover the morning hours, the weekend shifts. It's going to seek funding for a 2-man crisis intervention cares team. This would be Monday through Friday, 40 hours. And this program would be from El Centro de Libertad. And what it is an alternative to dispatching and responding to calls that involve mental health crisis. So the calls that go to the sheriff's office would be redirected, or they would provide additional support in conjunction with law enforcement and other first responders to respond to those calls. They would provide trained and expert scene assessment. They would provide de-escalation, scene stabilization. They would provide motivational interviewing, and then they would come up with a plan of action. They would provide connections for mental health care treatment, and they would also provide a warm handoff for additional coordinated services through Life Moves. The grant application also will seek to expand the current service areas. It will also seek funding for a motel voucher program, including staffing for that program. And with that program, we hope to provide dedicated beds or shelters to the MILLBRAE unhoused individuals, where we would have them on hand as they are needed. It will also, that program would also facilitate more intensive care and ultimately better communication to help the unhoused individuals and have better outcomes. It will also seek funding for a program coordinator to administer not only the day-to-day overall operations of the program, but the dispatching services in the daytime hours, and the coordination with all the entities involved. And of course, we're also seeking funding for the operating and administration costs of the enhanced program. So this is, again, a state grant opportunity, and it took some time to develop it, and even if we don't get it, we have now the framework of what is needed, and we can seek funding through different grant opportunities, whether as a whole, or some of the elements of what I presented, we could go after funding for specific elements as they are priorities to the program. And I'll hand it back to Deanne for the rest of the presentation.
Yeah, thank you so much, Isabel, for speaking to that. It's been a lot of effort, especially from Isabel and myself, to try to come up with what would be of most use to the city of Millbrae's specific situation when it comes to encampment resolution, given that the way that we look at encampments, it's not quite the same in Millbrae when we're considering the folks that end their day at the BART station as being an encampment, right? So it's a very unique situation in regards to homelessness, and I appreciate that Millbrae is taking so much time to try to come up with creative solutions to that. So I do want to talk a little bit about specifically what types of services it is that we're trying to provide and that we are providing to these clients. So there's a long list here that you can see on the screen. We can help support with ID cards, with so we'll typically bring people like a DMV voucher and offer transportation to and from the DMV. Given that the MILLBRAE team currently is at night, we're looking to be able to provide these services specifically for MILLBRAE in the day shift with some dedicated resources to MILLBRAE. So things like, ID cards, social security appointments, birth certificates, CES assessments are critical when we're trying to secure housing for individuals, because it is the only way to access the housing pool for this county. So our teams focus on getting people assessed through the coordinated entry system. We support with shelter placements when those placements are made, whether that's transportation, whether that's, warm handoff to a shelter case manager. Definitely with housing referrals as they come in. If a client is currently being case managed by us, typically the county will send the referral over to us to support the client with completing that. And that is a long and arduous process. So we do a lot of paperwork to help the client secure housing. And we can support people with entering different detox facilities, residential treatment, outpatient, or mental health services. We have a healthcare for the homeless team that Life Moves oversees as well on our outreach side. And we can help support clients with getting matched to case management through that team. They can support with, Medi-Cal application, with dental and vision referrals, with referrals to the street medicine team. We support with GA, we support with, advocacy and appointment reminders. Again, lots of transportation. Jesse and Jesse are typically both driving around that area, supporting clients with getting to and from different shelter sites, detox residents, and all of the things that are available at night. So in order to get clients enrolled with the program, the client just needs to be currently experiencing homelessness in San Mateo County. The client needs to be willing to meet either via phone or in person to complete the initial intake. And we assess what their needs are, immediate needs and then more long-term needs. And the client needs to complete that intake packet with us and sign a release of information so that we can work with other community partners and support their housing goals. Once that happens, they begin non-intensive case management with us. So it's kind of a touch and go based off of what the services are that they need. They can be considered for intensive case management if they continue to engage with our program. We add them to a top priority list. We send that list off to the county and we say, hey, this person is really interested in getting off the streets. They're working with us. Can we add them to our intensive caseload? Each case manager can carry approximately 15 to 20 clients on their intensive caseloads. And those are clients that we are working more closely with to support with their needs. And generally speaking, we'll receive their referrals for housing and support them with that as well. And in addition to that, we know that this is sort of the quarterly report. So this is where we want to report out some of the data that we have for the program as it stands. So the HELP program began in January. So with that being considered, while it began in January, the work didn't kick off until mid-February. So these numbers are really based off of February through March. Currently, we have 40 unduplicated counts of outreach and engagement. So those are clients, 40 different clients that we outreached and engaged to that were willing to complete the intake and get enrolled. This doesn't count for all the clients that we connect with that aren't interested in connecting with us to that level of getting an intake complete, as well as it doesn't count all the times that we engaged with these 40 clients. So this is just the count of how many clients we connected with unduplicated. You'll see that the number of unduplicated case management services added is a little bit higher, and that's because this is carried over from the last contract period. So if those clients still had a case management service attached to their name, like they're still working with us previously, when this new contract carries over, they'll still show us having a service. So these are clients that we were previously case managing that we're continuing to work with, as well as new clients that were added to case management services. And we have already temporarily housed 53 individuals through the emergency night cots that are available to Jesse and Jesse to utilize, as well as more longer term shelter options. We completed 28 surveys. So part of the data that we collect are surveys where we ask questions to individuals who we engage with at the BART station. Some of these individuals are some of the people that we mentioned here in the year-to-date data. And some of them are just folks that were willing to, get a snack pack in exchange for a survey, maybe, so we could just sort of collect more data on who's at the BART station. So you'll see that the numbers here out of those 28 surveys year-to-date show that most of the individuals arrived at the BART station through some sort of transit, whether that was like BART, bus, or Caltrain. We did have a couple of folks who walked that way, and also that arrived via police escort. So what that means is when we engaged with them to complete the survey, they had connected with our case managers through a police escort. That doesn't necessarily mean they specifically got dropped off by a police officer at the BART station. It just means that they connected with Jesse and Jesse through police connection. Many of the folks that we are currently connecting with, as you can see, have been experiencing homelessness for over 3 years now. Some of the individuals that we surveyed said as much as 20 years that they've been out on the streets. So these are people that are chronically homeless, 1 to 3 years, 3+ years. It's a good chunk of the folks that we're connecting with. Additionally, we asked what city of residency they typically are from, and you can see that there's, approximately 8 of the folks that we engaged with were outside of San Mateo County, but the remaining 20 individuals are from within the county. So we are still serving mostly county clients based off of these surveys. But we do know that one of the issues we run into with people we engage with around the BART station are that they can come in from out of county. When we ask where they usually sleep at night, the overwhelming majority do sleep outside or unsheltered, or in like a hotel, on public transit, or in their vehicle. So all of these folks are unsheltered who we're connecting with. When we ask them where they plan on sleeping tonight, some of these answers can come from people who are in the middle of receiving like an emergency shelter placement from us. So you can see that, there was almost half of the folks still planned on sleeping outside. But we were able to get 25% of the people we surveyed into inclement weather beds, as well as another 7% into hotels, and then detox. Detox is generally first chance sobering station. So that could be somebody who was interested in detoxing, but it could also be someone who just needed an emergency shelter bed for the evening, and first chance was able to take them in. And then the last question I think that we asked them here is, what city do you plan on staying in tonight? And so these answers typically line up with where the individuals received that were willing to go into shelter had their placement made. So like, for example, South San Francisco, Burlingame, and Redwood City make up the majority of this. And it's because that is where a lot of the inclement weather beds were available, or the shelter beds were available. So most of these people are staying in those cities where there is availability for an emergency shelter placement. But we do still have folks, about 10%, that were staying in the city of MILLBRAE, or another 17% that were willing to go back to their city of origin. We can support them with receiving transportation back to whatever county it is that they were coming from. So yeah, that was pretty much the wrap up of what the data was for the last couple of months. We're very much actively working in that area. As like, for example, tonight, I'm sure you could run into Jesse out there at the MILLBRAE BART station as well as a couple other case managers who are helping out with some overtime right now. And I just want to open the floor up to any questions you guys might have.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Garcia, and thank you, Assistant City Manager Carlos. Councilwoman Cahalan.
Yes, thank you so much. This really is a successful program, and it's really wonderful to talk to people about it. And the more I talk to folks, word really is out across the county of what we're doing here in partnership with Life Moves and the success of it. I did have two questions. One is, I'm sorry I didn't catch this before, but I didn't realize we don't have folks on the weekends. What kind of difference do we see on the weekends when we don't have any hot team folks? Or are there any folks?
So
that
yeah,
can
I mean, this
speak
is
to
a county-wide thing, I would say. There is really no outreach services available over the weekend in really any part of the county. And generally that's because there aren't a lot of social services that are open during that time as well. And outreach is, while we are a social service ourselves, we are mostly the bridge to those other services, whether that's shelter placements or housing. And so the coordinated entry system, since it's only open Monday through Friday, there's not a lot that we're able to offer folks on the weekends. But it doesn't change the fact that having somebody there to be able to speak to somebody and maybe make an appointment for the upcoming week is super useful. And it's something that we're definitely taking into consideration. And I know that's a huge part of the grant that Isabel was talking about, is trying to get that weekend coverage, because we do receive quite a few referrals that we'll have to come back to on Mondays to try to capture. And it can be difficult to locate those clients if we're not able to engage with them right when they're seeking services.
Thank you. My other question was, I know this new grant talks about the dispatch and some folks downtown, but I believe there was another grant or looking at work previously around having someone downtown and dispatch. Is there a status update on that?
So I do want to give a little bit of background with the dispatch, which is that I think there was a conversation about hiring somebody for dispatch. I can't speak specifically to the city of MILLBRAE, and I'll let Isabel definitely chime in if there's anything I missed here. But what I can say is Life Moves has been talking to the county about hiring somebody for dispatch, and there was a little bit of a delay on that front for various reasons. But it looks like things are actually moving forward with hiring somebody as a dispatch for our team. However, I do want to state that generally speaking, we don't open up like a dispatch line or any type of hotline to the general public. This would be for a very select few individual community providers who have sort of vetted the calls and know that, you know, the person that they're asking for services for is in that area, is in fact unsheltered. So this could be, you know, like law enforcement, the sheriff's office, the county offices, like the Center on Homelessness, that would be sending out, you know, those referrals to our dispatch. And then the dispatch would be then sending those out to the appropriate case manager for whatever region needs coverage. So we're sort of going to start it out really, really small, opening that line up for individuals who are just within whatever it is that the county ends up deciding on as far as who can make the referrals. And then if we see a lot of success and that things are going well, the hope is that we can open it up to even more, you know, city officials or different locations where they might need calls for services. But we're starting out small because it will just be one dispatch person. And that should be starting up really soon. We're already looking to start opening that position online.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilman Fung.
Okay. Thank you for the update here. Just want to get some clarification based on the comment that you made earlier. First of all, do you have a timeline, more definitive timeline, months, weeks, years, before this hotline is available? And secondly, what are some of the barriers to make it more available to our city staff or perhaps even the public to notify individuals who would be in need of those assistance?
Sure. Yeah, so as far as the dispatch goes, we're looking at within the next few weeks of opening up that position to hire somebody for that position to start working on dispatch calls, again, with a select few community providers. But because we're still waiting on some final decision making from the county, I can't speak to exactly which providers they're opening it up to right away. What I can say is that the county and Life Moves have been, along with Pacifica Resource Center and We Hope, we have been piloting an outreach app where people, or where different providers can also send in requests for service through an app. So far, it looks like that's gone pretty well with the piloting. So the goal is to sort of centralize how we receive referrals, sometime within this year. While we do those things, I can only speak to what I know as far as how we've overseen outreach. Generally speaking, when we receive calls for service from the general public, like a concerned citizen, those calls end up being folks that maybe we've already engaged with during the week when we received a call from like a law enforcement officer and they weren't interested in service. And given that we have while we have a few case managers, we don't have enough case managers to go out and speak to the same person on a daily basis because the citizen sees that person on their walk every day. So we don't see ourselves opening up a line where the general public can send out a call anytime soon. But what I can say is opening it up to city officials makes a lot of sense for us. Opening it up to law enforcement and opening it up to other community partners makes sense for the individuals that we're trying to serve. And I foresee that happening again within the next few weeks. We will start opening that line up.
I think it'll be extremely valuable for our city staff and at least our executive staff to have access to that hotline as soon as possible here. We do have I receive a lot of phone calls and text messages from our constituents with regards to our unhoused population here in our city. They are highly concerned about the situation, obviously, and then I think, we want to make sure that this hotline is successful. And I understand when you said, some of those cases may or may not be interested in services, but I think to the credit of this program, it is important that we help as many folks as we can, to the extent knowing that many of those folks who needed help did not know they needed help. And I think that's kind of the point that we wanted to drive home here. Also, we want to help find ways to manage and eventually reduce this unhoused population here in our city. And that's the goal of all of this. So I would certainly like to see these programs and updates brought back to our homelessness subcommittee as soon as possible here so that we can have a meeting and evaluate how we can make this even more effective in the city of MILLBRAE. And I certainly appreciate the additional grant funding that we're going after here, Isabel. I thank you so much for bringing it to our attention. We certainly want to go after these extra resources here to ensure that we can successfully address the homelessness issue here in MILLBRAE. Recognizing that, we want to manage this population here, and as well as help find ways to get them the help they need. Because understanding much of the times, certain unhoused population may not be aware that they need help, especially those who would benefit from mental health assistance.
Thank you, Councilman Fung, and I should have recognized that Councilman Cahalan and Fung are our City Council unhoused subcommittee on that. Councilwoman Pappen.
Thank you, and thank you all for this amazing work. A couple questions. Number one, good job on the grant, but I hope you are getting letters of support from our legislative members, because they are very interested in this, both of them. So whatever you submit, I think letters of support are extremely helpful. Give us a little push on that front. And secondarily, rumor has it Bart might kick up some money to help us pay for the services at the MILLBRAE station. Well, if it happens, it happens. Can't really trust them too much, but they are in discussions about that. If this were to happen, I really would like to see us reaching out to our 24-hour businesses. Safeway is hurting. People are, what happens at night, if you're there after 9, is not good. It's not good for their business, it's not good for residents, and I don't believe it's good for those who are unhoused. So we should approach them about maybe partnering in some way, shape, or form. But we do need to get these services extended to the downtown business area. And that would be specifically, I think, Walgreens and Safeway, because they're the ones that are open at that time. And I do think it's important. The Sheriff's Department does the best they can, but I assure you, I go there late at night and it's a problem. People need assistance there, and it just should not, they move directly from the station over there. So we need to make that part of our plan. And I think the county, in their efforts to reach the 0 mark as far as unhoused, that needs to be considered in most jurisdictions. Because people will go to those areas. So I'm hoping that part of our plan is expanding the services, not only in the station at night, but also in the downtown area where our businesses are still open. That's very, very important.
Thank you, Councilwoman Pappen. A couple of questions then, and I think that's a great comment, working out with any of the 24-hour businesses. We never seem to hear from 7-Eleven, or I haven't heard from 7-Eleven as another 24. A couple of questions. In terms of the comment Councilwoman Pappen said about BART at the Gateway ribbon cutting, there is a BART employee that I know through the BART Bicycle Advisory Committee, and he told me that part of his assignments, they're covering for each other because they're a little low staff, but they are going to look for resources for MILLBRAE. So we do need to follow up with that. I don't know if that meant with policing or with assistance, more along the nature of what we're doing with Life Moves on that, but let's keep an eye on that. And my other questions are sort of related to activities happening around the country in San Francisco. The news has talked a lot. The governor was down in the Tenderloin in San Francisco. They're bringing in National Guard people to help in the Tenderloin. My question is, will that move more people onto the trains, be it BART or Caltrain, and what would be the impact here? And maybe for our staff and Life Move staff, just be aware that there might be, if they're getting pushed out and they're pushing the tents out and they're trying to stop the drug dealing on the street and the shooting up on the street, according to the news this week. Will that bring down here, and are we prepared for that? And then something, I don't know if I mentioned it here, but I was talking to some new council members. I was relatively new when the Super Bowl came to Santa Clara, and we were all given training about looking for young people who've left home and are subject to human trafficking. Now, with the country doing a lot of laws that seem very anti-LGBTQ, are we going to see more young LGBTQ kids on trains ending up in our station? And are we working with they just reopened the building in San Mateo, but are we making sure that we've got services for kids who might have run away from home, run away from a situation, and that we're getting to them? I think I've read, but this is not my specialty area, that if we can get to young children right away, once they've gotten off a bus or a train, and keep them from becoming addicted to drugs, we have a much better way to bring them back into, get them back into school, get them back into a more positive life transition. So if we could just look at those two things, given what's happening nationally and up in San Francisco on that. I really would like to see the social services. And the last thing, Life Moves may or may not know, but we held up see, click, fix to make sure that we had a component for the unhoused. And I have told people for a bunch of reasons to be using that tool because it allows us to collect data. Is that information being shared with Life Moves?
It is, and we need to continue to get the word out because that is a mechanism for our residents and business owners to use to get to us, so I can get to the chief and to Life Moves, in essence, dispatch then the work or the service.
And I really appreciate the comment that Life Moves professionals have reached to a person, but they're not ready for services yet. And you might be getting, or police might be getting 3, 4, 5 phone calls all on the same person there. I guess that points to when they're not ready, what do we do until they are ready? So if we could think about that and maybe in the next quarterly report, talk about I know we've heard it, that it takes multiple approaches and the right time, the right situation, but we still have residents who may have had, and I don't want to use unpleasant, a scary interaction, and we still have responsibility to our residents. So what can we do in that meantime? And I mean, that may mean 5150 psychology hold. I don't know about that, but what do we do in that case? What can our public expect when they seem to see that same person over and over and they're reporting, we know we've got this program, but we haven't fixed all the problems.
Correct.
Thank you. With no other questions, this was an informational. Again, Life Moves, thank you so much. To the public, we are canceling the Mayor's Civic Coordinating Council meeting this Thursday. We will be at the Life Moves breakfast on Thursday, so we will see you then, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you all so much.
Okay, and thank you. Last item under new business. This is preliminary, agenda item number 13, preliminary general fund budget presentation for fiscal year 23-24 operating budget. This is an informational item, and City Manager, you are going to report.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. City Council, again, as the Mayor mentioned on the calendar here, it's an informational item. We wanted to just kind of present to the City Council as we get into budget preparation. We have a budget study session and budget hearings coming up. We have our goal setting a week from Saturday. And so we just wanted to give you kind of an idea of where our revenues are, what our expenditures are, and kind of the plan. So I will hand it over to Mr. Mike Sung.
Thank you, City Manager Williams. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Honorable City Council members. Today we're going to talk about the fiscal year 23-24 preliminary general fund budget. Next slide, please. So we're first going to talk about the history of how we kind of got here. I thought we would spend a little bit of time as to what had actually happened. Next slide, please. One more, Eduardo. Thanks. So we'll see this theme again, but the proposed general fund overview that we're looking at here for 23-24 is $39.5 million for our revenue and $39.5 million for our expenditures. And pursuant to our ordinance, our additional reserve amount will be an additional $500,000. So when we adopted the fiscal year 22-23 budget, our reserve level was at $5.5 million. And over the years, what we've actually had is a fund balance, and that accounts for about $12.7 million. And this is an accumulation over, well over about a decade or so, or a little bit longer. And so what we're proposing is to increase our reserves in alignment with the 15% reserve requirement for 23-24 and move that to $6 million. And so that's part of a fund balance strategy that we're looking at for 23-24. And that'll reduce the fund balance to about $12.3 million. And this is separate from the actual reserve amount in itself. Next slide, please. Thank you. As I had mentioned before, when I got here, we were in the middle of the pandemic. Over the last 3 years, we've seen our revenues basically declined, especially in TOT and in sales tax, but it's been slowly coming back, and then it's sped up a little bit further. And what we're really seeing is we're in the middle of a recovery, and we are recovering. So TOT represented about 28% of our revenue in our last year before COVID, which was fiscal year 18-19. And what we're looking at right now is that we're in a moderate recovery. We're getting to about 24% of the general fund now for 23-24. Last year, it was about 20%, and the year before, it was really quite a low amount. In fact, just kind of as a comparison, if you look at the fiscal year low in 2021, it was a decrease of 75%. So the pre-pandemic level was about 8.9 million. 2021 was about 2.3 million. It was a huge drop in just TOT revenue in itself. But we're slowly coming back up, and we're looking at getting to about 9.5 million for next year. Another piece I wanted to talk about, sales tax, also with a pretty good moderate recovery. Current sales tax revenue is estimated at about 3.2 million, which is very close to what we had when we started the pandemic in itself. And we're making a lot of moves, as City Manager Williams had alluded to. We're basically going through economic development efforts with TOD2, with the new biocampus to build our revenue base for the future. Next slide, please. So also I should mention that city managers taken a lot of steps to help us when we had those revenue declines, which included a series of cost containment strategies, totaled well over $8 million in savings. Staff has done more with less, and we've had to wear multiple hats as well. And we haven't had any new headcounts unless approved by the City Council. And we've been very judicious with even our part-time and seasonal employees, having to make sure they are actually cost recovery. We've also stretched out the amortization schedule for the vehicles and equipment. It's increased by about 5 years. And our equipment replacement and vehicle replacement fund currently has sufficient balances. So that's looking good. Next slide, please. So we've also looked at IT software. We are getting the equipment that we need to continue city operations. But we're being really prudent and judicious and mindful when we are spending. Same with capital improvement. We've also reduced our reliance on contract services unless absolutely critical. And then on, we're starting to see some of the maintenance on city facilities that we're revisiting right now. So for example, the Chikuti, we were doing the roof in the last few weeks. And then the Civic Center here, we've re-roofed that as well. So the other thing I should mention is that our unemployment fund and workers' compensation fund also have sufficient balance through fiscal year 23-24. Next slide, please. So just a little aside about some of the project accomplishments that we've had over the last year. We've completed the sewer portion of the Hillcrest Subbasin 4. Very big project is Skyline Water Tank. So that was one of our largest water projects that we've ever had. And then the Hillcrest Underpass, Landing Lane, as I mentioned before, the Civic Center re-roof, and we're starting on the park improvements, including Bayside, Marina Vista, and Central Park as well. And as the Assistant City Manager, Carlos, had mentioned, we're continuing to address the homeless issues through our partnership with Life Moves as well. The city's also added 2 more deputy sheriffs on patrol and some additional funding for road maintenance. And just to remind the council, these are all services that were identified as top priorities in our community survey last year. So we are listening, we're making decisions based on the input that we are receiving from both council and from the public as well. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned before, this theme repeats about our overview for the general fund, 39.5 million and 39.5 million as well. And then I'm going to go into a little bit more detail now as we go into some of the graphs. Next slide, please. So you can see that most of our revenues in property tax, and that's very common for most cities. Property tax is usually the #1 revenue source. A little bit different for us is TOT is our #2 source. As I mentioned before, at our height, it was about 28%. We're going to get pretty close to getting back. We're at about 24% for 23-24. That's the projection right now. And then, of course, sales tax is about where it should be as well. Next slide, please. So here are the actual projection numbers for our revenue. You can see that going across, our property tax is growing. One thing we did kind of take out is the VLF, for the vehicle license and due piece. That's a little bit more haphazard. It's growing at about the same clip as property tax. The only thing is just the state delaying payments here and there. So it usually takes about 14 months to get payments for VLF from when it's due, and it's based off of a very complex formula that they use for basic aid for schools, and that's why it looks a little bit more haphazard on that. You can see that all the other revenue sources, especially with TOT, you'll see it's gone up by about 1.2 million. That's our projection for 22-23 to 23-24, and just kind of as a comparison, you can see the 21-22 actuals at 4.9 million, and we're projecting out to be about 8.4, so we're recovering right now. The other thing I should mention is our licenses, permits, and charges for services. Those revenues are also, there's a lot of one-time revenues in there, and the corresponding expenditures I'll explain a little bit later when we talk about CDD. The Community Development Department as well. Next slide, please. So this is just kind of a microscopic look at what property tax revenue is actually composed of. There's many multiple components, but as you can see, the main thing that people are used to is the secured portion, which is really just the ad valorem 1% property tax piece. And then, as I pointed out earlier, the property tax and the vehicle license fees, a little bit haphazard. It really depends on how many schools are basic aid during the fiscal year, and also when the state actually pays us that amount. Next slide, please.
Hey, Mike, just real quick, for the benefit of the council, maybe we can go into that a little bit more. I know we're getting on time, but this goes back all the way to Pete Wilson days when he was governor, and he implemented what was supposed to be a 1-year program, which was taking property tax, taking VLF, vehicle license fee revenue that's allocated to local municipalities in the county, borrowing that money and paying it back through property tax that the state collects. Mike will show you how the property tax works here in a second. So Pete Wilson was governor in the late 80s, early 90s, maybe earlier. I can't remember, but 1 year, but it's now over 30 years. And so what happens is the state of California continues to implement it every year to balance their budget, withhold money from counties and cities, eventually pay us back. And so that's what Mike is talking about. And so that's why you'll see a little bit of delay, or shortfall in our property tax, but then it's caught up in 18 months later or something like that. So we always get it, but it's always balancing this cash flow issue of our needs in this fiscal year, which we're not going to get paid the shortfall in the VLF till next fiscal year. So that's kind of what he's talking about. If that clarifies it or makes it more fuzzy, I don't know, but it's the state taking money. Yeah, it's the state taking money away from us, repaying us back, but the time of that doesn't fit within a 12-month fiscal year. So, yeah, they're floating. Yeah.
As City Manager Williams and City Attorney Casman had alluded to, that's kind of what's really going on with the state. It's really interesting that when they actually did take away the VLF permanently and promised to make us whole with a like amount of property tax, that they made that decision. It's benefited the cities, I should say, because property tax has grown faster than VLF has. So that is definitely something that has worked in our favor. But as City Manager Williams had alluded to, it's really based off of a couple of things. One is the timing of when they pay us back, and also how many schools are calculated out as basic aid inside the county. So the county allocates all of the property tax to the cities of how much they actually receive from the state. And then once they get a calculation, they allocate out a percentage to every city inside San Mateo County of how much you get. Once the state pays it back, then they reallocate that amount back again. So it's more of a timing issue than anything else. All right, next slide, please. So now I'll talk a little bit about the expenditure distribution for us. And you'll see that about approximately half is fire and police, 1/4 each almost. And then a portion of general government, which includes council, city manager's office, attorney, clerks, human resources, and finance. And then community development and public works and parks. And then there's a little section called transfers out, which I'll talk about a little bit later towards the end. Next slide, please. So these are our projected expenditures or general fund uses for 23-24 and into the outer years. What I'd like to note out here is that you'll see something a little bit odd. For example, in public safety for fire, CCFDs proposing to increase their cost by 6.2%. We're actually saving some money in the UAL, which is the unfunded accrued liability. And that was due to kind of more of an anomaly. CalPERS had an extremely great year back in 2021, believe it or not. So it takes 2 years for them to include that into our actuarial valuation. So you'll see the UAL actually dropped almost $400,000 for fire for the next fiscal year. And then these are just numbers that we've actually got from CalPERS, and that's the actual amount that we'll be paying next year. And then we're expecting it to go back up because the rate of return wasn't particularly great for CalPERS the following years. So that's why you'll see that it jumps up quite a bit in 25 and 26. What I'll also note here is in community development, you'll see that there is an increase, and that's directly related to our development activity. And basically, we're receiving more revenues in development, and we're having more expenditures. So it's in from the revenues and out from the expenditures for the development piece. The other piece I wanted to mention is transfers out. You'll see that we'll actually have a decrease in 23-24. And so there were some one-time costs last year, like, for example, the parking management plan, that $350,000. That's a one-time cost that we're not putting into 23-24 right now. So that's why there's a decrease. Next slide, please. So just a little bit more information on property tax and what its value really is. If you look at the property tax distribution for each dollar that we get, or I should say each dollar that is paid, the city gets a little bit less than 16% of that. 15.787 cents is how much we actually get. Most of the property tax dollars actually end up going to the schools. About half of it goes to the school, a little bit more than a quarter goes to the county, and then all the special districts kind of share the remaining amounts. Next slide, please. So as a quick example, you can see on a $2 million home, we're going to, for the ad valorem 1% out of the $20,000, MILLBRAE gets a little bit less than $3,200 bucks, $3,157. And you can see how the distribution works for the rest of the entities. Next slide, please. Kind of the same for sales tax. The sales tax rate here is 9.375%. Most of that actually goes to the state. 6% of that goes to the state of California. The other 3.375% is divided between San Mateo County, City of MILLBRAE, and also 1.375% is actually to the transportation and transport agencies. If you click on the next slide, please. You'll see the actual breakdown. As I had mentioned, we get 1% out of the 9.375%. The state gets 6%, and county gets 1%, and the transportation group gets 1.375%. Next slide, please. So just kind of as an example of what's going on with service costs versus revenue, if you look at a $2 million home right now, then this is a scenario where you just bought a $2 million home, not all of the homes that are subject to Prop 8 that have been bought 50 years ago and have minimally increased that 2% every year. But the ad valorem tax is about 20,000. The city allocation is a little bit less than 16%, 3157. You look at these per capita costs of how much it costs to actually provide services, and you subtract that from the revenue that we actually get, you'll see there's an actual deficit. And then we've done lots of economic activities. TOT helps pay for that. Some of that is also helped paid for through sales tax, but there's still kind of a deficit. Housing alone from the property tax ad valorem isn't sufficient to pay for all of the city services. And as I mentioned, this is for a $2 million home. There's a lot of homes in MILLBRAE that were bought like 50 years ago, and the maximum increase that they've gotten are the 2% assessments that you see through Proposition 8 over time. So we're working on different resources, especially with economic development, to help kind of bolster that.
Mike, if I may, so I work with Mike, and we wanted to share this with the city council and the public, because residential in California does not pay for itself. It does not. No matter how much the densities are, density goes up, population goes up, service levels goes up. It doesn't. So the point here is, one, residential does not pay for itself, and two, it's also a clear picture of how important our economic development efforts are. Grow our sales tax, sales and use tax, grow our hotel, grow our business environment so we can have a sustainable revenue source that we can then spend money to improve the community and deliver higher levels of service and those things. So this is a really important slide that just, again, a lot of discussion about housing. A lot of the tools that were eliminated, such as redevelopment, taken away. Housing does not pay for itself. I've studied it for 37 years in California. But that being said, economic development is so very, very important. Job creation and growing our tax base. So we wanted to just illustrate why that is such.
Okay. Thank you, City Manager. Next slide, please. So as I'd mentioned before, a little bit about the capital and transfers in and out. We're looking at about $790,000 in general fund for the capital for streets and parks. Then we're also looking at getting in about 2.7 million from cost allocation from the other funds for all of the services that all of the general government departments actually provide. Our transfer out total is estimated at almost 2.5 million. Of that is about $1 million subsidy to the recreation fund for operations. The very last police remodel fund for debt service, that's scheduled to end next fiscal year. So after 23-24, we are not paying any more police remodel debt service. And then also for field license and for storm drain. Next slide, please. So the schedule kind of looks like this. We're looking at a budget study session operating budget for May 9th, where we'll go into more detail about the budget itself, which includes the other funds. Also, we're looking at the CIP study session, which we've tentatively scheduled for May 23rd. Planning Commission review of the CIP on June 5th, and then the adoption of the proposed operating and CIP budget on June 13th. With that, I'm open for any questions.
Thank you, Finance Director. Questions? Councilwoman Pappen?
Thank you. Question, we had a little extra, we have to renew our fire assessment. What's the impact here? What's happening?
So the fire assessment.
And I know Central's raising their rates.
Currently, the fire assessment's approximately about 1.6 million. If we go back a few slides, I think we can actually see what that amount is underneath special assessment. It's underneath the property tax distribution slide. If you go to 12, I think. special assessments, we're looking at 1.65 million. That's how much we receive from the fire special assessments.
How many times have we renewed it? No,
Joan,
No, I
it's
don't think
twice
we've ever-
since I've been on the council. So,
My memory is,
I've campaigned for it at least twice, I think. So, it's coming up again next year?
Yes.
It expires next year, correct? And just to answer your question, council member and all the council, we are doing some surveying right now of property owners because this is a property-based assessment, so we can go to a vote anytime. We don't have to wait for an election date because it is a property-based. And so we have a consultant that is doing a surveying to see, support and levels that we could also perhaps raise it. So, but this is something that MILLBRAE property owners really need to continue to support so we can fund our fire department and emergency services when it comes to not just fire, but EMTs, medical, responses. So more to come on that.
We'll hold that space open for you. Council.
And what is the CCFD assessment? Not assessment. Raising the rate, I heard?
It's about 6.2%. If we can go to slide 14, I believe.
Don't know if we're going to raise it. We're just studying it. We're seeing what the capacity is of the property owners and the votes. So we may not.
Yeah. I think it's extremely important that we're at the table to discuss these changes in fees and ensuring that the people of MILLBRAE is properly represented, our interests are properly represented there.
I'm sorry, council member, I wasn't paying attention to your, yes, totally different. Yes, I mean, we Mike, if you go back, it's a 6% increase, 6.19% increase this year. And that's been a pretty consistent, it's been as high as 12% in the last couple of years. So yeah, sorry, I was thinking about the fire assessment, not who we contract with and the continued increased costs. It's getting expensive.
Yeah, and then we also have a contract with CCFD, right? The time limit?
Correct. That contract expires
December 24.
of 2024.
Yeah. Okay.
Year and a half.
So I think it's important for us to engage in that productive discussion and ensuring that the people's MILLBRAE's, the interests of the people of MILLBRAE are well represented there.
And I think absolutely that is correct, and we'll be pulling our public safety committee and fire subcommittee together to start those discussions.
Thank you. To the public, I think what we're trying to do with this operating budget and then coming back with a capital budget is to show you where sources of funds come in and the uses of funds. And I strongly encourage all of you to look at this presentation and to dive in and think about it, because it really shows you that common misperception that as houses sell for more here in MILLBRAE, we should be very, very rich, but we get such a small percentage of that. The one thing that I see missing in here, so to the public, please take the time and learn this, and we will be coming back to you with more updates of what's going to happen with CCFD. And I just realized on my goal-setting document, I did not put the renewal of the fire assessment in my priority list. So already one thing that we need. The other thing is how, for council, for our goals for 23-24, how that will fit into the budget on there. So keep that in mind, especially for the couple who have not yet turned in their goal setting. And our goal setting meeting is, and it's not moving, May 6th. One of the things that gets to me, again, that I don't have a really good understanding of, is there are a number of county-wide measures and a regional measure that collect money. So Measure AA, which is the sea level rise one, and it gets collected regionally, and then the money gets dealt out somehow to the counties. Measure M, Measure K still, and it seems to me that our Board of Supervisors dictate where some of that money goes. And yet there's another fund that is our road repair money. And it was amazing to me to learn that Hillsborough actually gets more money because they have more linear miles of road, not necessarily the width of the road or the traveling on the road, but the more miles of it. Now that we have a lobbyist, I think we need to look at some of these funding mechanisms that are regionally based and argue for the fact that we need more road money because we are cut through traffic. I've been using this starting with my year on CCAG, and now when I talk to other council members, they go, oh yeah, cut through traffic on that. I think we need to put our head together on some of these regional funds and make sure we're getting our fair share. I misquoted something at Progress Seminar on Sunday. Of all of the bicycle pedestrian money coming in, San Mateo County gets 2% of that money from MTC. Now, there's some other funds out there, but if all the bike pedestrian money comes to the 9 counties that MTC covers, seven in MTC, and 2% is coming to San Mateo County, and I can tell you based on some charts, MILLBRAE's gotten a $276,000 grant when another city that shall be nameless has received $26 million in this same time frame, that we need to be looking at the distribution of funding for this, because I would consider us under-resourced. And now that we're an equity focus area, which usually is based on communities that have historically been under-resourced, we might be able to get some additional assistance. And I don't mean the competitive grants. I mean, let's look at that road survey. Why is Hillsborough? Yay, Hillsborough, I'm happy for you. But why do we have the second worst roads when we have everybody driving through us to get to the airport, or San Bruno to get to MILLBRAE Avenue? Burlingame is building all their housing immediately on our border. They're going to be using MILLBRAE Avenue, but we will not get those road repair dollars because it's based on per capita. And as Burlingame's population grows, they'll get that money, but it'll be our roads that are being used. So I know that's more work for staff, but if we can start looking at some of these funds and making sure that we advocate on that, I would love to see that. I'm glad to see the Hillcrest Underpass hydraulic study. We'll be getting a report on that soon. Do we have a time frame? I know that probably didn't prep you on me asking that question, but.
It depends on our outside legal counsel that is handling the claim for us.
And we're going to get, Elaine, you're going to make sure that the presentation slides are easily available. I have to go back and look at that air quality district one, because I have for years been asking Bay Area Air Quality Management for a pollution monitors on there. And because otherwise we have no data that says what SFO is doing for the 17% of flights that fly directly over us, for that pass fly that we heard about an hour and a half ago that flew right over us on a missed runway connection. We have no idea of what that pollution is. So if we're paying money to CARB and they're doing regional work with it, we should at least be getting data for what our air quality is on that. So I'd love to go a little bit deeper into some of these. And are we getting value for our services? I do not think we are getting value for the money we're paying for one shoreline. I attend those meetings. I see where the money is going, and I don't think it's helping us. Even with the extra $4 million that then Assembly Member, now Congressman Mullen got, the predominant amount of that is helping other places on that. And that was specifically for MILLBRAE, Burlingame on that. So I think we need to make sure we're getting everything we deserve on that. With that, I think this is fantastic. I will encourage council members, please get your goals in so that we can do next year's budgeting for that little bit of money that might be out there. City clerk is not looking at me, but she would love to get those in if you could. And we do have that meeting in a week and a couple of days. So thank you. Any other comments? Opening it up to public comments. City Clerk, do we have anybody? There are no hand slips.
Mayor, I do not see any hands raised.
Thank you. Closing public comment, and this is an informational item. Thank you for the schedule, so we know when capital budget is coming and how we blend everything in together, and June will be an important time. So I thank you, staff. This was great. I love all the new charts and data. I need more time to absorb. So good work.
And thanks to Mike and his staff, that a lot of work goes behind this, so thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we do have a closed session, but would like to do council comments. I know every council member has been very busy. Councilwoman Pappen, would you mind if I start with you?
No problem. Went to the opening of the county's new resource center, which is quite amazing. It's like 270 beds. Just an amazing project in that it has all the services built in, right across from the jail there. The services one receives when they're there, counseling, dental, mental health. It's just amazing. Hopefully that will be very, very successful moving forward. Good steps in the county's direction for zero homelessness. And let's see, MTC has a retreat this weekend, or this week. So after the meeting tomorrow, we have to go on this retreat. They will be discussing the polling as it relates to a ballot measure for housing and one for transit. So the most recent polling will be discussed at that point in time to see which direction they go in. Senator Wiener is carrying legislation for transit. He's shifted from housing to transit. Convenient for him. And we will see which direction they recommend to go in. That's, today, of course, recognition of Jacuti, Officer Jacuti. Lovely bench and plaque. Was really beautiful service and remembrance. Officers from all over, CHP, San Bruno, Pacifica, South San Francisco, MILLBRAE. It was just really nice to see everyone come together in such a way because that was 25 years ago. Tragic incident. And as the district attorney pointed out, a semi-automatic weapon, and in 25 years, we have not gotten very far as people using those weapons and killing people. So hopefully that, we keep saying hopefully. And I also attended the session last night at the Shea Center. My compliments to the Sheriff's Department, the school district, the district attorney, the mental health. It was really a needed meeting. I think the parents got to hear a lot of information. It's a very frightening situation. Hopefully never to be repeated. We keep saying that as well. But a lot of valuable information was given out. It's probably on the school district's website as to how to approach this. The investigation is ongoing. And so really there are a lot of nuances. I won't give any advice from here, but please look at what the experts said in that realm, in talking to your children and how to report things. And the sensitivity is very, very real. And you have to be very, very careful. So we encourage anyone who has information to please provide it, share it. Do not hesitate in that realm. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Fung.
Yeah, plenty of stuff happening in the last couple of weeks, obviously, but in the interest of the upcoming closed session is already 10:41. I will reserve my comment till next meeting. Thank you.
Councilwoman Cahalan.
Yes, just a few things. I was also grateful to attend the opening of the new navigation center. All of the wraparound services that Councilmember Pappen mentioned It really, truly is a navigation center. And for those of us who've worked in social services, we really know that true wraparound services are what prove the most success. So I'm really excited to see what happens there. It looks really set up for success. I also attended the Taylor Community Meeting last night and was very grateful for everything put into that as both a community member and a parent with children at Taylor. As mentioned, there's great resources being put out, handouts about how to talk to your children and other resources provided. I asked at the meeting last night about language services, so they will be translating those documents into multiple languages and getting that out to families. And Chief Allen shared that the detective in charge of this, so if folks come forward, if you look at the materials, the detective whose number is given to reach out to, he speaks both Cantonese and Mandarin, and he can also direct folks to officers that speak Spanish and other languages that they have. So please know that to reach out and to get the information, we will have it in all the languages, hopefully the languages needed for our community. Commute.org met this month, our first one in person, and we met at the MILLBRAE Community Center and got great compliments on the space and the sunlight coming in. They are in the midst of their commuter challenge, and that's happening through May. So if you're using public transit or have been wanting to challenge yourself to use public transit for your commute, you can go to their website to see resources, and you can register to track your public transit use for your commute and work towards some prizes and rewards. The city manager mentioned May 10th that we have an event that evening to share the conceptual designs for Marina Vista and Bayside Manor Park. So I hope residents, especially those in those neighborhoods, will come out to the event to see the proposed designs, to hear the survey results, and give input on the next steps as we design our parks. And just the last item is a reminder that May 3rd is the last day of our special election for Measure A. So don't forget to get your ballots in, and we have a ballot box right here in front of City Hall. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Okay, I don't know if the public has noticed with SFO Runway 1 left being closed until approximately May 25th, how much quieter it is. But we will be putting out the new noise testing after the runways go back to normal business. But at least here it's much quieter, and I'm glad Councilwoman Pappin's here so I can tell you we think that the noise may be moving up through Green Hills. So we may be looking for a resident in your Green Hills neighborhood because this new model that we're using shows that the noise is going there. So if you can talk to some of your neighbors there. I want to give the city has hired a lobbying firm, and our lobbyist is Michelle Rubiclava. And she reached out to the city manager, myself, last Wednesday, that Senator Allen, and don't tell me where he's from, had a bill that was working on artificial turf. That bill has been turned into hydrogen, but a new bill, his bill, Senate Bill 676, would specifically, although maybe not as specific as we like, allow the state law that takes power over local government for drought-tolerant plantings, but give local government control back to be able to block the use of artificial turf on residential properties. I was at a meeting last night with the environmental community about how would that bill really roll out, and some advice came in that we'd like to get additional language, so I have to reach out to Michelle on that, for commercial properties and for not necessarily City of MILLBRAE properties, but agencies and institutions that might exist within a city boundary. So that seems to be a really good thing, and it's bipartisan support, which is kind of interesting. But thank you, Michelle, for reaching out to us, and Senator Allen. As you may not know, bills can change so much that what might be working right here may not be the same as 2 weeks from now. What it does point to that we as a council have to come with a process so that we don't have to come back to council each time we're trying to advocate for a piece of legislation. In the world that I come from, as long as a bill is either adamantly against or with policy, we can send those support letters on that, and it's slowing down even the support for Brown Act changes. So if staff, we can talk about a way that if it's consistent with policy or whatever, and bring it back to council so that we all agree with a process on that. But again, keep an eye on Senate Bill 676, another bill just passed out of its third committee. It is, and I didn't write it down, it is called the Safe School Act. And what it means is that all day schools, preschools, and elementary schools, I'm not sure about high schools, but little children will not be allowed to put artificial turf or any surface that increases the outdoor heat, temperature, or the chemicals that would off-gas and get into little bodies on that. And that passed its third house and is going on from the Senate to the Assembly. So that's another, there's a bunch of little bills that all have a component of artificial turf. Even as I drive around MILLBRAE and I see more and more installations of artificial turf, beware if you put it in, and you put it in after our moratorium went in, code enforcement will ask you to remove that artificial turf. Bike pedestrian had their meeting. The bike pedestrian meetings are turning into more of a traffic calming. I've already alerted the city manager for that, but it's the one place within our structure that the residents can come and talk about speeding cars or not being able to cross the street safely, more of a pedestrian issue. One of the things that was discussed and would like to come back for council is we are rolling out the e-bikes. Tom, did you say on May 11th is the e-bag event? But Half Moon Bay is currently looking at not allowing electric bicycles on their trails. There was consensus within our MILLBRAE bike pedestrian that e-bikes should not be on the spur trail. Staff had done research on finding signage that could go on that, but it would need an ordinance for it. So if that's where council is going, and e-bikes can go up to 20 miles an hour, and our own e-bike program, we can turn off the motor apparently, we can create zones for it, but that doesn't mean somebody that has their own e-bike wouldn't end up on a spur trail and end up on something. So something to bring to you on that. City manager, I've already sent you the thing that there has been a request to do a COVID end of emergency declaration period analysis of something not on our goals, but something to look at and to codify lessons learned where we might do better. And MILLBRAE Community Enhancement Advisory Committee would like to start moving forward on adopt a drain. I've seen some of the comments on block drains on the new C-Click fix, and it seems like a good time now to start getting ready to roll that program out this summer on that. So I think, oh, and sadly, Mr. Sung, I didn't tell you, we had a BOSQA Policy Committee meeting last week. We are keeping the rates that BOSQA, the Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation Agency, will not be raising rates to cities, but SFPUC will be raising their water rates, and I don't know what that percentage is yet, so that's going to impact us. The decision was, well, I should say the policy committee, we were unanimous to the full board to keep it zero because we know SFPUC is doing it and we know that inflation, we wanted to keep it, but next year, if it stays like this, it will go up 1 or 2%.
Mayor, just so it's 10 minutes till 11.
Okay,
and we start
I'm
the
done.
closed session.
I'm done. All right, so with that, closing open session and moving to closed session.
Yeah, just for the record, we will have a closed session. It's a litigation closed session regarding a claim that has been filed against the city by Diane.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, good night. We will not be returning. We'll be reporting on closed session at our next meeting.
We will report out at our next meeting.
Very good, so formal council meeting is closed at 10:50.